In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
In the heart of Iași, Romania, the world's top gamers have gathered for the ultimate showdown. IESF brings heart-stopping matches across a variety of gaming genres in an electrifying experience that celebrates the passion and dedication of esports athletes from around the globe. This is more than just a tournament. This is where champions are born, legends are made, and anything is possible. Get ready to witness the ultimate display of skill, strategy, and heart. The IESF World Esports Championship. It's about to take your breath away.
Do you think you've got what it takes? The challenge will be tougher than ever. In 2023, International Esports has a new home. Over 100 nations fighting for the championship in a celebration of everything that makes esports great. Who will rise up to the challenge? Who will be the world champion?
Well, the action will only continue to heat up from here as we continue with our week's worth of action here in the IESF Asia Regional Qualifiers as we move on to the Oceanic region for today's proceedings. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the stream. I am the Eternal J. I'm joined by WEC as per usual on today's broadcast. And, well, it's good to be home for you, mate, isn't it?
It definitely is. We've often seen Team Australia versus Team New Zealand over the last handful of years. It's an historic matchup in Counter-Strike history because it's one where two countries are so near one another, they're always trying to battle for that top spot.
Indeed they are, but only one is going to be able to take the spot at the IESF regionals and the IESF Asian Championship. Of course, right now it feels like both these teams, I mean, the winner of this one could well be the favourites of that particular LAN event as well, Dwayne. So for me, I'm looking at this match with a ton of importance here on the road to Yash.
You've got to imagine so. Just knowing that for Team Australia, as a prime example, they've normally had the upper edge over the New Zealand teams in the past. And it's kind of been something that's been a track record that Australia's always been the more superior roster and always been the more superior region. So knowing that it's one best of three today in a qualifier to get yourself to a LAN event, there's heaps on the line today.
Well, let's show you what we've got coming up over the course of today here. It is only one match that we have set in our best of three, as you mentioned, between Australia and New Zealand. So the schedule is going to be looking a little bit light by comparison to some of the other days we've had here at IESF. And just this one match is really the main focal point of everything that we've got coming up. And like you said, man, it is a bit of a regional rivalry, right? Australia and New Zealand, really the only two countries within Oceania. I guess it's kind of a bit of a natural sort of progression in that sort of sense. But you are right about what Australia have been able to do, right? They've always been the country that have represented this region on the international stage. The team that we have here, of course, having almost recently gone to the RMRs and everything like that. Like right now, this is going to be just an exciting match, just in terms of the rivalries of the countries, let alone the match itself.
And I mean, Team New Zealand in the past has actually had some reputable names. You think about guys like Sicko, Raz, Lonsdale, even Gratisfaction played in the open qualifiers, didn't make it here all the way into the qualifier itself to play for the LAN event. But for Team New Zealand, I think there's some fresher names that are coming through with the lineup this day and age, and I guess it makes a lot of sense. You have a look over here at Team Australia, very familiar, right? This is the core from Encore. Licky, Savage, Hats have been going for quite some time as a core 3. TJP's only just joined up, and then Gum's going to be kind of the stand-in player that's helping them out coming into this event.
It's a bit weird to sort of, not weird, but I guess a bit difficult to sort of weigh this team up overall because officially we haven't really got like an actual encore roster. These guys have sort of been playing with each other in, I guess I could say, a bit of a mixed capacity, even though they have been playing under that particular name, but they are playing under the Australian name today. New Zealand, however, there are going to be a lot of names that I guess the majority of people at home won't be all that familiar with, Weg. So what can you tell me about these guys?
And for JTR, he's been around for quite some time, so he's probably one of the more experienced players that we have on this Team New Zealand roster. Val also had a little bit of a dip a couple of years ago of having some opportunities playing at the higher end of Oceania Counter-Strike as a whole, playing with that Chiefs roster. And then you've got a couple of newer names, your Tissery that comes into the mix there, Smilodon and Slippery. I'm not too familiar with these guys. They've only had very limited pro experience in the Oceanic region, so this is a very huge opportunity as such for these guys today to prove that they've got what it takes to hang with Team Australia, because it's a lot more reputable and a lot more known on that Australia side.
It's going to be difficult to match up to this particular team of Australia. You mentioned, obviously, the core of Licky, Savage, and Hats. Licky and Savage have been going since 2020, since the, I think it was Downfall Gaming, way back in the day. Like, obviously, not really a reputable name in Australia at that time, but even then, you've even got Hats and his time on Order and Renegades, and these guys, as a core 3 alone, have a ton more experience by comparison to what the New Zealand team have. And on that basis, before we even get into the minutiae of map vetoes or intricate details of strategies and how the teams could form up as two kind of mixed teams taking on each other, by default, you kind of look at Australia as the favourites as a result of that.
They always are, and they will be again today. This is a very solid Team Australia that have got a lot of names that have played at international LAN events. Like, I'm sure someone like Hats would love that opportunity to get back to a LAN event. We saw that TJP was only in Europe a few months ago playing with Rooster. We know that Licky and Savage have been to a few RMRs. So when you consider who's on that team of Australia, they're looking to get back to a LAN event. They're looking to try and prove what they've got in Asia.
And remember as well, this is a team that nearly made it to the RMR land, so for them it's going to be a high importance matchup again. Very important for the context of the Asian Championship. So, map vetoes, WEC, we're seeing Mirage, Inferno and Nuke played out in today's proceedings. How do we feel about this?
We saw Mirage pick coming through from Team Australia in that grand final matchup, I should say, against Deadweight. For the side of Team New Zealand, you know you're going to go into something fairly standard with an Inferno. You don't want to go something that's too difficult to play as a mixed team. Nuke, as a decider, has historically always been a very good map in Oceanic Counter-Strike. So looking at that, I think across the board, the veto's not going to favor either team massively. You have to just look at the rosters that are going to be participating today and give the advantage to Team Australia.
Again, it's very difficult to take a look at a map pool for New Zealand because as far as I'm aware, these guys aren't really like a definitive team and haven't really had a lot of experience at a high enough level to gauge like a macro view of their map pool. So for them, it's going to be tough. It was going to be tough from the outset. So for me, even in spite of the map vetoes, I'm kind of looking at the potential of a simple 2-0 for Australia today.
Yeah, I'm looking at it that way. I mean, even the Encore core typically used to pick quite a bit of Nuke in the last few months. We've seen it even against some of the stronger teams in the region, like your Roosters, like your Greyhounds, and even your Vertexes that they picked it against them. So that back end of the veto looks strong for Team Australia, but I'll probably join you on that one, Jay, with a 2-0. I'd like to hope that Team New Zealand can show up a fight and try and offer a competitive series, because that's what everyone's hoping for today.
I think everyone will hope that every match will be competitive. If we got 3 16-14s, I wouldn't be complaining at all. But again, you have to sort of consider what's possible versus what's realistic. And right now, it does feel like the realistic outcome is Australia coming in and dominating their way through this matchup as they have done so many times before. Again, just the key difference for me is the experience we have over on these guys for the Australian side. Obviously, Savage has been making his way up through the ranks in the last couple of years. We remember seeing him in previous rosters, the way you and I, we've seen his sort of rise on his previous teams. And obviously, his youth is very important to his own development. He's currently, right now, one of the key rising stars in Australia.
Yeah, he is, and it's kind of intriguing, right, that I think he's been a name that's been known for quite some time now, and he's still 18. He's still the youngest player in both of Team Australia and Team New Zealand to be represented today. I think for Team Australia across the board, he even might be picking up the AWP a little bit more than he usually does. Again, they typically play with Sterling, but with Sterling being a New Zealand player, it means that Gump has got to come through as a stand-in. You actually don't have a main AWPer on this team now. I know Gump can do a bit of AWPing. I know that Savage can do some AWPing. So there's probably going to be some dynamic and role changing going into this matchup today for him.
And to keep an eye on where those roles sort of sit within the team itself, again, kind of mixing it up over the course of this event and this whole series and this circuit, because of the nature, as you mentioned, of the nationality rule. For Australia, obviously, it does mean that there could be some compositional issues in terms of the team formation, the tactics, the playbook, and where Savage might have to reposition himself if he does take up that AWP mantle. But I'll be keeping our eyes on the actual buys and what we have over in the setups between these two sides, mostly because of the fact that this is kind of like one of the key sticking points for this team, and this will be the sort of like the starting point for Australia to go to not only the Asia Championship but also potentially to the finals as well.
And just knowing that Australia's actually been represented quite a few times in the IESF circuit. I remember all the way back in 2016 that you had Atletico there. They also came through with Ground Zero in one of the lineups. Chiefs also played. So there's been a lot of representation, event after event, of seeing Oceanic teams and especially Australian teams there. They're looking to try and prove a point in this qualifier to then move on into the LAN event in Saudi Arabia to make something happen, to prove that they're one of the strongest teams. Because I think in the forerunning right now, Team Mongolia and Team Australia, they're the biggest threats that we have in Asia.
To think as well that Australia didn't really have a decent crack at the last finals in last year's event, right? That this is going to be a great opportunity for them to sort of prove that, yes, we can still compete at these kind of events. And again, as we were mentioning earlier, Encore are going to be a bit miffed that they didn't make it to the Asian RMR earlier on this year, because they were only one match off of doing so. This is an opportunity right now to go to a key LAN in your region and potentially springboard it into an even bigger competition when we get to Ashi. So in that sense, again, Australia, they've got a lot to prove in this sort of sense. I do wonder how much research will be done on how much they'll be showing on their playbook in this particular matchup, though, because as you mentioned before, the issues with roles and where everyone sort of sits in terms of this lineup and their roles, their positions, all the macros and micros of the team formation, that's going to be exploited by many other squads when it goes to the Asian Championships, because Australia, they're not going to be in full form by comparison to their main circuit team.
It's very true, and I think both of these teams coming into this specific matchup are just going to come in, try and have some fun, show off their quality, and then once you've got that qualification, once you've then got yourself on preparation for the LAN event, that's when you can start doing that further homework. That's when you can start getting prepared for the other teams, because you have to focus on the matchup today. We know that both teams came through the upper bracket of the Open qualifiers. Actually, both teams didn't even drop a map going into that best-of-3 final. So both teams have had a stellar track record. One of those track records is going to be ended today, though.
Indeed it is. Again, you do have to take a look at the teams themselves and see who's got the runs themselves might be strong in terms of the brackets, but ultimately there is one team that sort of stands above the rest in terms of this matchup. So again, for New Zealand, it will be a tough little affair. What are you hoping out of this team today?
I think for Team New Zealand, just to try and get some vision on some of the newer guys. Again, your Tissoy, your Simladon, and Slippery, I'm not too familiar with them. They've only very recently started to get HLTV officials under their belt and get more involved in the scene directly. So for their sake, I think just being able to show off what they have to offer. For JTR, I know that he's a very solid AWPer and a guy that's been around the scene for quite some time now. For Val, just to be able to slot in and show the consistency that he's had at a pro career for a longer amount of time than some of the others. So just try and cause an upset, see if you're able to pull it off, but it's going to be difficult for Team New Zealand today.
Yeah, we can't overstate that enough. I mean, one of the key anti sort of arguments to that and the counters that you could say for New Zealand is the fact that because these guys are so new, they're so fresh, they're so unknown by comparison to what Australia have, they've got all the material that they can use to do their prep work and to figure out the ways in which you can exploit this side versus Australia that might not have as much material to pull from. It's also very unpredictable because New Zealand are, for all intents and purposes, a mixed team. They're not really playing deep in involved strategies. They might get hyper aggressive. They might try and bring a firepower fight to the table and catch Australia with their pants down, and that could be a viable way of making an underdog upset happen. Again, is it viable is the question. I don't think so. I think that we'll only have to find out exactly what the firepower basis of these newer players, these unknown guys, is going to prove in this matchup against Australia. But for New Zealand, I don't see it being impossible for them to sneak a couple of moments in this matchup.
Yeah, you've got to expect so. Again, when there's regional derbies up on the line, when there's matchups like this, there's going to be a lot of pride in this sort of best-of-3 to make sure that you have the one up against one another. I think for Team Australia, across the board, they realise that they've got a massive edge going into this series, and I think if they just keep it clean, have good communications, make sure that they do the basics right, they should be able to walk over this series and to claim that best-of-3 victory itself. For Team New Zealand, I think just come in and have a bit of a laugh, right? Come in and try and just show the quality. When you've got two mixed teams up against one another, it can sometimes make the series quite wacky. And I think being able to exploit some of the very small mistakes and try and come away with some very good defaults is going to be the main objective for both of these teams in this series.
Yeah, keep it simple, I think, is the key sort of phrase to take away from that. Not overcomplicate things, which can lead to the downfall of many top teams. I mean, down history, we've seen so much of so many of the top squads in significant tournaments lose out to tier 2 or tier 3 teams because they weren't quite as prepared as they might have been, and especially in these days where it feels like upsets are happening every single day in top competition. So again, not impossible, very unlikely in my particular argument's sake. And again, you are right. Like, if they play their own game, that's the key thing. That's the key thing that you'll be looking at for a team like New Zealand, just to play their own style of matchup and to do the things that they want to do above all else.
And I think for Team Australia, just to get back to a LAN event, it's been a while since they've been there. We know that in previous iterations of Team Australia versus Team New Zealand, it's always been a 2-0 or a 3-0 when we talk about best-of-3s or even best-of-5s. We know that Licky and Savage and Hats have been involved in the encore circuit when it comes to LAN events. Hats has sort of come back into the Oceanic scene with a slightly different roster than what he was playing with recently, like you said, with Renegades and Order. So for their sake, just being able to get back to a LAN event and represent Encore, because I think we've seen a lot of great things from the team of players, the organization itself, and some of the comedy that they bring behind them. They'd love to be able to represent Australia and to bring it to a LAN event again.
Oh, most certainly. I think it's a case of pride for everyone involved in IESF to be able to represent your nation on the big stage at the LAN events and maybe even in the finals. And again, as you mentioned, Australia are one of our big damage dealers in terms of the Asian Championship. And if they make it this far, if they're able to beat out New Zealand today, there probably would be a decent shout. You'd see them in the actual finals itself, right? Like, that this is a very, very powerful team in the grander context of the Asian region.
Again, Team Australia has always done fairly well when it comes to IESF events. I think we've seen 3 top 8 placements. So looking at the competition that you've got in Asia, again, I think Team Mongolia looks to be one of the strongest threats. They're playing in a couple of weeks' time to try and see if they can qualify to the LAN. And of course, Team Australia, they'll be a massive threat if they're able to pull through today.
Absolutely. So those are your 2 teams to watch out for the near future. But again, right now, the focus is on Australia versus New Zealand. And you mentioned, obviously, the head-to-head history between these 2 teams in previous IESFs and national-based competitions. And for their own right, like, you must imagine that for New Zealand, there's a little bit of, I don't know if pressure's the right word for it, but the understanding that obviously you're going into this matchup, and so far this team is yet to, or this nation is yet to get a win against Australia, right? You talk about the national derbies and everything that happens within the Oceanic scene, but for New Zealand, the idea that on the international basis, when flying the flag for tournaments like an IESF, it's not been all that successful for that nation.
I mean, just take a prime example of someone like Raz, Sicko, Gratisfaction. All the New Zealand boys always used to play with the Aussies. Like, that was always the common theme over the course of the last 10 years, 5 years or so. So when New Zealand actually get a chance of representing an entire roster from the region itself, you always know that it's going to be slightly more difficult. The player base is smaller. There's not as many professional players from New Zealand as there are from Australia. So they, again, know that there's a lot of national pride. We've always had a rivalry, even in traditional sports, between Australia and New Zealand, even outside of the esports scene alone. So that's going to play a huge part in this game today. And for New Zealand, it's now up to them to see whether they can break the track record.
I do love when sporting rivalries come to the fold in esports. It always feels like it's very appropriate. England versus France, and now Australia versus New Zealand. You know, all those kind of things are very interesting in that sort of capacity. Again, though, Australia, they are looking like the comfortable squad in this sort of case. What do you think's got to go wrong for them, for New Zealand to be able to pull something out of the hat? I know that it's going to be a massive mountain to climb, but like, what are the key things New Zealand will be looking at to try and exploit against Australia in this context?
I think for Team New Zealand, maybe try and put some pressure onto Gump. Again, he's the guy that's the stand-in, right? He's the guy that doesn't often play with this roster, so maybe try and see if they can try and isolate him the most as possible. You want to make sure that someone like Savage is kept quiet, because he is a star player that could put up a lot of impact in a series. And even for Hats, you've got to try and make it uncomfortable for him as well. He's the most experienced player that we have in this entire server today. He's one of the most experienced players that I think has come from the Oceanic region in all of Counter-Strike. So for that in mind, you've got a lot of a great sort of ability when it comes to Team Australia today with the roster that they're pulling through.
Well, speaking of lesser established elements within the Australian roster, one of the names that did stand out to me was TJP, because, like, from the layman's perspective, right, you know guys like Licky and Savage and Hats, and maybe you heard a little bit of Gump because of the fact that he's competed enough to have a profile on Wikipedia, but TJP doesn't have that same sort of reputation. So tell me a bit more about him. What's his role or his style going to be within Australia?
Yeah, so he's found himself in a bit of a unique position, right? Because I think he was playing on Paradox for quite some time. He went over to Rooster and got a chance of playing at the ESL Pro League, played with the Rooster team there, came away with some really good upset maps and showed some very good class up against some of the best teams in the world. From that point onwards, there's been some more roster changes going on with that team and as a whole. He's now found himself for the last month or so playing with Encore for quite a lot of the online events and starting to get more matches under his belt with Licky and Savage and Hats as well. So he's one of those guys that he's one of the younger guys in the team. He's had some experience playing at the higher end. He'd love to try and get back to a LAN event.
Yeah, most certainly. I think that's always the key thing for all the Australian players, but for him especially, obviously, his chance has certainly already been, but not quite gone per se. Like, he's had his crack at the top end of the scene, and now's a chance to maybe step things down a little bit, but join his national squad and try and make a run at IESF itself. So I'm excited to see how well he does. I think the figurehead of Australia is always going to be Hats, though, right? Like, again, we've talked about his whole experience within Renegades and Order during periods where those guys were incredibly dominant within the Oceanic scene and actually made international cracks as well. So for them, like, they'll be looking at him as the head of the table. I don't know if the IGL role is the right appropriate sort of phrase for it, but more like a bit of veteran captaincy more than anything else, right? Again, he's going to be the head guy. He's got the most experience in this roster, so those young players will be turning towards him and his guiding hand to bring them through this matchup.
I mean, even Licky, right? The IGL of the team, he's had a good relationship with Savage. He's now had a decent relationship with Hats being a part of the roster. And for Hats, I mean, he's a very historic player when it comes to the Oceania region. Started his career off for Parallax, had the chance of playing with Avant and Kings, and then from that point onwards, he was involved in that iteration of Order, Renegades, back to Order for the really good 3 to 4 years or so, playing with some of the best players in the region, going to pretty much every regional LAN event and as many international LAN events as possible due to qualification spots. So for Hats, even though he doesn't find himself on the Greyhound rosters of today, he still finds himself as a historic player in this region, and one of the most qualified players, I would say, in the entire Asia qualifiers that we have over IESF.
I mean, minus the Mongols, of course, but we'll talk about those guys probably on another day. But for Australia, obviously, like, I'm not certain whether or not Hats is going to be the star individual per se, because we have the likes of Savage involved in this matchup. So who is the guys you're looking to stand out the most performance-wise for these two teams?
Yeah, probably between Savage, Hats, and TJP. I think all three of those guys bring a very solid rifle pack to the squads. Licky brings in a very cool head when it comes to IGLing. He's played against some of the top teams in Oceania. He's played in some of the larger stages. So for this game right here, he'll make sure that there's no pressure getting towards him into any of his guys.
We talked a lot about the Team Australia side. What about New Zealand, right? Who do you think are going to be the standout elements, the stars of that particular side? Is there any sort of like particular note of the new guns, or is it all going to be down to those veterans?
Yeah, I'd like to see against like Slippery. He's been playing with God's work. Most recently, we've seen him get some more officials under his belt. We know that Tissery as well was only very soon and very recently been able to get more involved in the oceanic scene. He's a guy that I'm not too familiar with at all. So yeah, for Tissery, very keen to see what he's able to offer in a series like this.
We'll find out what the offerings of New Zealand are going to end up being as they take on Australia in our first map of Mirage, as picked by the New Zealanders. As we get started with the pistol round, the USPs are brought out alongside the Glocks, the utility set in. Gump's got the defuse kit as well for Australia. Early smokes inbound towards that A site, where you have got Licky on defensive line. Right now, they are just hunting for positions. They are looking for these individuals and hopefully for an opening fight. Val's going to get caught off towards the mid-control. Goosh down to very low HP, but does pick up the opening kill alongside a kill back towards the A site. The bomb can go down.
Trying to get that bomb plant open for top connector. Now, they've been able to exploit this jungle control, and JTR's actually been able to find a multi-kill. Hats is completely surrounded now towards CT spawn.
And that 2K basically sealed the deal in this round. Hats will try fight back in his 1 versus 4. Is being flanked. He knows it, but just doesn't know exactly when. Gets that headshot on JTR at least, so brings home the 2K. Sees that third man, the fourth player, however, playing off-site. Hats on the bomb, taps it once, forces that player to peek. Will try and go for it again. Swing out from one, checking Palace on the second, but Hats knows that he's dead out of time. Can find that kid, but way too far away from the bomb site. It will be a pistol to open things up for New Zealand. Hats giving it a decent go, though. 3 kills for him, but it's not enough.
And nicely done there from Team New Zealand. You could see that exploitation up there towards the A site with the XE. You had Val playing up from the top mid boxes, who was able to do some damage down to that short angle. And then as soon as JTR is able to pincer himself aggressively into jungle and multi-frag, that seals the round off completely.
And still great efforts from Hats, but starting pistol game by New Zealand, a very fast play in towards that A site. And, well, that's kind of what we were hoping for here for these guys. Play your own style, play confident, play fast and loose and aggressive. Sucker punch Australia and give yourselves an opening advantage. Of course, it will be the force back from the CT side with the M4 on Hats especially. That 3K definitely aiding his own economy game. See what he can do with it as one of only 2 rifles in play for them.
And Tissoy trying to see if he can put some pressure down there towards a short control. Now, already spotting out the likes of Savage towards top of connector. You've got a heavy split play coming through from New Zealand that can start exploiting out towards that connector control. For now, they've even got a lurk of Val trying to walk further forward into the apartments.
Oh, good shot on that Deagle. TJP start things and follow suit with Hats on that M4. So 5 on 3. The rifle's doing decent enough with the scout tag, but TJP gets another as Savage goes on the way out. Licky now in from CT spawn, catches Slip, and now is all left to 1. Smilodon 1 versus 4. Galil found in his hands, surrounded by CTs, found by one more back at CT spawn. So we'll call that information in for the Australian side, and now it's only a case of time. Maybe he gets the bomb down, but a 1v3 with 16 HP.
TJP's already out here towards a short control, and you're right about getting that bomb plant. That will help the cash injection, but he's completely trapped. Will not be able to get away with another kill.
Flash out to the left, gives a little peek in, but TJP is happy to get credited with the kill on that AK. So, very well done. And most out of the Deagle, I was highlighting the M4, saying Hats are going to have to go big. No, a Deagle's more than enough in the case of Australia. Bouncing back on the second round, one apiece now.
And it really seemed as if that Val caught a good timing. You could see him walking further and further towards a balcony position deep in the apartments. But TJP was able to swing on a contact out there from the short control. As soon as he found that opener, that's where it all crumbled apart. And that force buy works out wonderfully. Now, because New Zealand were able to get a bomb plant, they're not on double eco status. They are still going to force it down anyway, rather than going in for the Glock round.
War of attrition in the early portions of this matchup. New Zealand still have that one Galil working into the mid control for Val. TJP taking his own M4 out on his own buy, dishing out that early damage to the man. India is also throwing up. They have made progress up to the mid control, but TJP has seen them and still loses his life alongside Savage going down to their own 5v3. Oh,
and even another kill. Very good work out here with the entries when it comes to the mid-control. And now for Gump and Hats, this is such an awkward position. Gump's going to get surrounded completely. There's already a walkout from the B site, out from the apartments. Gump's now down on 28 points of health.
No way he makes that alive. Villadon knows that. Bomb plant will come in towards default, just in case he's going to try something sneaky in at short. Ultimately, even if he does, an easy kill or trade will go the way of New Zealand. Certainly no retake in this context for Australia. Gump will look for exits. Had to look to save the M4. Or Spy was the right call for the T's.
And we saw Team New Zealand playing Mirage in their quarterfinal game that then moved on to the grand final, where they were able to get a 16-3 result against the Raz and Chris Magnum team with Crimson on the team. Some respectable names out there in New Zealand to get themselves into this position. And back and forth for the force buys. I mean, Hats would just love to be able to save this M4, bring it into the next round where they can buy it back themselves.
It's being hunted here, though. Back behind danger. He's not going to get detected. Almost takes that exit, but ultimately does hold on to the rifle, which is the most important thing here. It provides options for Australia. With TJP being on 1600, the issue of a force buy is being considered. And yeah, they will go whole hog into this one.
And New Zealand now find themselves in a position because they had so many players staying alive from that previous round. It's going to bolster the economy state. It's not going to force them into a double eco, even with losing this next round, if that is going to be the case. And Licky trying to get that M4 quite aggressively to play out from bottom con. HE up to top mid, doesn't find anything.
And Val's working his way out of Palace. Meanwhile, two players down at underpass will keep their eyes set in. Work their way towards mid control. CT presence is drawn towards that A site and away from watching connector itself. The smoke is in the way for the time being, but as it fades, see Hats gaining some mid control here from Sniper's Nest.
JTR and Tissoy just working on the underpass. And without anyone peeking aggressively towards short or window, it's a lack of information of a mid walk coming in. You've got Licky just trying to play from the top, jiggling down to connector.
Shoulder bait's going to catch him off. The taps of the M4 will be known. Smoke up to the Sniper's Nest. Eyes set on short. Very quiet in the second minute of this round. No damage done so far.
They've got a fairly heavy stack of 3 players up here towards the A side, giving a lot of freedom to work this connector control for the couple of T side individuals. Licky's got to be the first line of defense to cancel any of this connector presence.
Taken out immediately alongside Hats falling. One player on site will only last for so long. Savage down. And Gump will at least get that one trade, but again, counted for so quickly and easily there by New Zealand. TJP 1v3, his Deagle standing. The bomb's yet to cross here. But now with the rifle set, his Deagle will do well to keep it expensive, but ultimately will be unsuccessful in the round itself. New Zealand going to break the war of attrition, getting 2 on the trot. 3-1 overall on the board. Australia forced to eco.
And now New Zealand can start adding more rounds to their tally, get themselves off to a bit of a fiery start here on T side. Yet to see much competitiveness when it comes to Australia in the rifle rounds. We'll have to wait for that to consistently come as we go deeper into the first half. A couple of flashes, a very harsh eco. Australia just looking for damage.
Taps easy from the AKs. The spray should come in pretty easy as well. Very little in terms of the armor bases to try to protect themselves against the same punch. One frag does come through for them on Australia, but it's not going to be much in the grand scale of things. New Zealand able to bolster their economy state with 4 players alive. Gump might hunt for this AK, which might be a slight problem in firepower, but even then they've got one man up towards top mid. JTR there to receive the man. Keep it all under control for New Zealand. Australia look to the gun buy in the first true rifle round of this match.
And New Zealand's been able to offer quite a bit so far. And now it's up to them to see, can they continue the streak of rounds? Can they start getting themselves into a position where they've put a target on the economy float of the CT side, make it uncomfortable for Australia? A start off Mirage has worked out nicely at 4-1. Now, we haven't seen an AWP investment just yet, and I think that's going to be some question marks for both teams, on, especially for Team Australia, who's actually going to be bringing out the big green.
And we discussed that during the pre-match for good reason. It's going to be a vitally important role for them. Not as of yet, though. Again, automatic weapons across the entire board for both CT and T sides. With that smoke, Licky's going to lean in. Knows there's one player behind him at bench. We'll get that one kill, but JTR and Tissoy are able to trade back on 2. Savage back in Sniper's Nest is able to maintain control at the 3-on-3. Even he's forced to back away.
Now, Hats is just waiting to see if there's a walkout to come from the A site, and bang, straight away there is. Just the peek from under the stairs position offers up the man advantage, and now he knows the rest of the players are out there to the mid control.
Upgraded that AK and try to fend that A site back. Should be turned towards this jungle position where one CT is involved there. Savage against Valhalla. And now all left to Tissoy. 1 versus 3 for him. We'll grab that bomb at least up towards top mid, go into apartments. Or just go back towards T-spawn, I guess. Either one is going to be met with similar resistance. You've got that one man aggressed out towards the apartments controlling Gump. 2 players out towards A. All entries are being covered by Australia at this moment, so tough task in this clutch.
This is extremely tough. What he's got to hope for is individual overextensions, and as of right now, that's not quite coming through. Gump is starting to aggress slightly further forward out from the sort of connector position. Savage is going to do the exact same thing. Drop the bomb out in the open. New Zealand can't do anything about that at all. Australia find their second round, and I think it just shows the info play there from the walkout towards A being cancelled. Pretty much denied any accountability in that round for New Zealand.
2 AK saved in for Australia, meanwhile. All positives in the CT camp. M4s brought back in for the rest of the players. And New Zealand will also bring out the AWP for the first time. You mentioned it in the last round. It's out for this one. In the hands of JTR. Placed out towards the apartments control, trying to look for that opening frag. Savage, meanwhile, putting utility in from the Sniper's Nest. Slippery. Didn't quite see the man that prodded out from the connector position, so he'll just maintain contact.
Similar Don, trying to see if he can work up from top mid, smoke off that window position. Now, Savage being smoked off from window will try and see if he can reposition back out towards that connector sight line. And Tissoy trying to work connector 2. And not much aggressive approaches coming here from Australia at all. You had Licky just prodding around the A main position. Hasn't seen anything as of yet.
Looking above that smoke here for Tissoy. Eyes set on the center of the site. Smoked off again a little bit deeper in connector this time. JTR on his way in alongside Val. Savage on part of the defensive with one man on the center of the site as well. The AWP just can't quite seem to find the man yet.
Savage flashing over, might be able to exploit how many players are out there to the ramp control. Now, we've seen Licky playing close towards the stairs previously. Another resmoke with 35 seconds on the clock. This is going to make it slightly awkward with the time left, because there's not going to be much remaining.
Smilodon bursting through, player towards the back, a danger now been seen. Val looks towards Savage, turns on Hats the same. Quick double, nice and effective, 5-on-3, but they haven't accounted for Gump here at the ticket booth. Gets that first kill, spray blinded, and also got a second player in Licky to come out from Palace. Deny that bomb plant for the time being, 10 seconds, and Val's got to get Gump back. It's all left to TJP. Great effort from Australia, but ultimately the trading game was too staunch for New Zealand. They get their 5th on the board.
Just a very good multi-frag frag on a double entry. You can see Val walking himself up towards A, looks out towards that left-hand side position of triple, and then bang, straight out towards the right at the bottom of the stairs. And while there's a slight denial between CT and Palace of CTs that were in aggressive positions to try and put some pressure on into the late round, it was just how much impact Val was able to find earlier on. Bomb goes down eventually, and New Zealand find themselves a 5th round.
They also find themselves a tactical timeout, which I think would have been appropriate for Australia in this context, but New Zealand will take the time to let things simmer. Okay, so it's not a tactical, it's going to be a technical timeout here for New Zealand side. One-man DC, Australia given a little bit more time to simmer on their own position. Double eco status for several players, so maybe Gump might buy a little bit of upgrade in terms of the firepower, but you aren't expecting a full-on force buy here from the Australia side. Giving New Zealand even more breathing room. They have found a lead and maintained it since the start of this matchup. Australia, again, putting great individual efforts, but so far just not enough.
And New Zealand are putting on a good showing. And this is one thing that we've got to hope to see consistently out of them. Australia got themselves off to a decent start when it came to the pistol, but from that point onwards, New Zealand's been able to show quite a bit. And knowing that we've got Mirage, Inferno, and then even a decider of Nuke, you've got to think for New Zealand, this is a good beginning for their sake on their map pack. Val, there it is again. There's that double entry. And Australia, once they find themselves in a position where they've got to give up an eco again, that's just the pressure being relieved off. And New Zealand probably shaping themselves up for at least a lead going into the second half.
Only 3 rounds away from locking it in, one of which will come free in this eco for the Australia side. Unless maybe the Deagle or Licky can go massive, but you can't bank on that in this context. And New Zealand are the ones that are in full control. As you mentioned, their own map pick and Mirage. Again, kind of appropriate given the mixed nature of this team. So far, it's working well to their benefit. 3 rounds to the good. And only upgrade pistols on Licky and TJP for this round, so again, it should, in theory, and more than likely, be a 6th for the New Zealand side here. Stacking towards the A side. So at least they can overwhelm the AWP. That would be a little something here for Australia.
Yeah, you've got to imagine so. And JTR gets baited straight away. Now, they're not going to start rushing him down just yet. Instead, they're going to get closer towards A main.
Second shot not quite connecting. The Tech 9 does come through on Savage. Hats can finally overwhelm and indeed grab that AWP. So we'll lose control of the B site. Val finding Gump, Licky, and Hats, the last couple players. Trying to protect the president at this stage. The AWP, just the most important thing to Australia. There's no way they win this kind of clutch. There's no way they win this 2v4. Not without Kevlar, not without utility. Certainly not without the kit now that the bomb's gone down. So yeah, best effort, best bet, and kind of best case scenario for Australia here.
That's not a bad eco. You consider the fact that there's very little investment moving into the round. You get yourself a kill and, of course, a big green. Now, again, you've got options. We know that Savage can do some secondary AWPing with Encore. We know that Gump is also familiar with having the AWP in his hands. So between those two guys, I think it's the most likely outcomes that we see the AWP from those two.
Trying to look for one more exit on Licky's part. The AWP might get a bit pressured, though. At least they've drawn attention away from it. So if nothing else, Licky has protected Hats by the information bait and switch. Won't be re-peek it. Will not sacrifice that Deagle. Australia gain a 1-up. Now's the time to see where that AWP goes, though. We were asking it over the course of this matchup, over the course of the pre-match as well. And it does end up in the hands of Savage here.
Opportunity for the young 18-year-old to be able to show what he has. And for Australia to try and get themselves back into the game here. Only individual rounds being won from them in the CT side have not been able to show a massive amount of competitive nature. And New Zealand have comfortably got themselves up to 6-2. Very quick from JTR to try and see if he can exploit the short control.
Check danger in sight, so far forward. His teammates also into the apartments. They'll be heard here. Attention drawn away though. Backs to turn towards short, so JTR could easily strike into the corner. TJP gets one, JTR with 1 and 2 of his own alongside Tsoy's assistance. 4-on-3 situation for New Zealand. It might well have to be a save call for Australia. They have got Savage inserting himself into the site though. That AWP trying to get close in amongst the smoke with backup on the way in as well. JTR is tagged and one man also inbound towards the mid control. So Australia want to go for this here.
It seemed like they're backing off. No kill presented itself. Hats wasn't able to spot anything out from mid, deal with a lurker at all. Very quick explosion there from New Zealand, and I think you could just notice the pace that JTR brought out towards that short control. They go for the B pop out from the apartments. They try and smoke down out there to the right-hand side of Get Right. And TJP gets away with one. Gump finds nothing at all. New Zealand with the straight B pop works out to be a 7th. Australia struggling with the trades in that round.
Been struggling with trades all game long for me. Several rounds they've lost out because of great individual efforts, but New Zealand just that little bit extra sort of bonus, that little bit extra that thing being gained in these rounds to the kills in the trade game. One more element against the Aussies. And one more round for New Zealand to seal the half at their favour. Rifles will get brought back in thanks to Australia's save. The AWP staying in for Savage. Heavy presence as well towards this A play. They get inbound towards the ramp control. Val, wait for aggression, sees the shoulder and catches Licky on the headshot spray. Second kill found on TJP as well. This guy's having a monster round. Savage can't get the trade either. Desperate to land him. Finally he does. That's a 2-for-1 still for New Zealand here.
And this could be a misdirection. New Zealand will probably think we've got 2 picks towards A, so let's continue to exploit some further map control. Start walking a couple of players up towards Connector. Hats is already in a position to spot them out. Towards that default position, it's a 1-for-1 trade.
Gum found one more elsewhere, though, so as Hats goes down, it's still going to be a 2 versus 2. Slippery finds Savage again, missing the AWP shot, and now Gum's left isolated back here towards Sniper's Nest. Dealt with by Tsoy, and New Zealand will lock in the half at 8-2. Australia not having a good day in the office.
And the last time that we actually saw a listed match between Team Australia and Team New Zealand was 7 years ago. And you think about the idea that in an official capacity, we haven't seen many of these matchups over the course of history. We've got some new blood, some younger guys, a new generation of players moving into this kind of regional derby. And New Zealand are putting up one hell of a showing right now in Mirage.
You mentioned that record as well in history between these two nations in international competition. 7-0 in maps. New Zealand are on to break that winning streak of Australia. At least again, the rifle and deagle combination of Savage and TJP have managed to take a couple of names away from them. 2-for-1 trade that favours Australia this time. New Zealand forced to slow things down.
And they still find themselves in a pretty good position. Even out there towards a ramp control, there was a lot of players being spotted. Hats comes through with one decent kill with the scout, and even a tag up now to Slippery.
To land that kill shot. Got teammates inbound as well from mid and the Sniper's Nest control. Slippery and Smilladon do get a couple of kicks back, but Hats finally finishing the job, and the USP comes out while completely blinded. Finds his last man. Third on the board of Australia, finally getting a bit of a gear back into this game. But we saw their last force by victory, Dwayne. We saw their last upgrade pistols do well in that one round and then get answered back immediately by the New Zealand side. So it might be a way into the next round, but there will be a buyback for the T side, and you can imagine that New Zealand will try contest.
Of course they will. New Zealand know that they've been the much stronger and superior team when it comes to rifle v rifle rounds. Hats with the opening incendiary down there towards ramp on the anti-rush. Quite a few players coming in from top mid here from New Zealand.
AWP Boost was attempting to catch the angle out the apartments. Gets the shot back. Sniper kill, JTR. Frag found to kick things off for Australia. Finally, the early round starting to go well for them.
You've got Hats working out here towards top connector, looking into Palace, waiting for that walk attempt. And New Zealand slow the round down completely. You've still got Tsoy up here towards top mid. Trying to see, can he work a pick? Is there anyone going to slightly jiggle or overextend the line towards short or window? And playing the percentage here for Australia. No one's over-peaking.
.60 seconds for them to formulate a strategy here. Two players will start to make their way in towards ramp, and when the likes of Val or the A hit. Two defenders for the time being. One CT, one jungle. Third man also on the way in for Australia. Smilodon going to try look for the entries as they look for the A hit here.
It might even be a contact heavy. And try and see if they can pull some further distraction. You got a walk forward coming into connector. They've got no idea against Tissoy, and finally he's been seen now by Hats.
5-on-3, making it 2 is Hats. You can tip your hat to him. Valhalla down. Bomb plant should be received out towards default burning. Eventually Licker's going to catch him for the smoke, and Hats there with a clean kill on to Slippery. Outside of the Molotov damage there on the defuse position for Licky's part. Pretty much the perfect round for Australia. All 5 alive, 4th on their board. Hats with a 3K, and that sequence was impressive.
And I think it just shows there from Australia that they worked a very defensive setup in that 5v4 after getting the opening pick. Hats got a good timing there onto Tissoy, tried to walk slowly into bottom of connector and just got caught on a timing, and then repositioning up from the top of the stairs, focusing back on that palace control. No chance in that round from New Zealand when it came to even trying to get themselves into a post-planning situation. Australia, probably one of the best rounds of the game that we've seen so far. Now it's up to them to follow it up, get a streak together.
Economy whittled down now for New Zealand, so Australia a chance to make this a damn close half. JTR playing edge of the smoke here on the catwalk. Taking a little bit of utility damage, only 5 points of health. So nothing major for him. Walking his way forward, trying to get to short control. Teammates again in the apartments. His tap to the headshot as Savage looking to engage on Hats, but Hats finds that trade to a 4-on-4. And now the hit should come through for New Zealand. Molotov sent, but body blocked there. Gump gets the kill on Smilodon, and New Zealand are forced to cancel.
And Gump just finds himself in the right position at the right time. Just when the B-pop was coming through after they lose the short individual, it ends up him getting a kill, and now they have to cancel. A smoke down out towards a palace control coming through from Gump while Licky is trying to play in from CT. Now they don't know it's been taken just yet. Excellent jiggle that baits out the AWP though.
Val missing, leaving it on his 2 rifle teammates. 2 AKs versus 4 CTs, of which they also have 2 AKs themselves. Flashing for Licky to try and get his teammates into the site. Both players blinded by that on New Zealand. Hats waiting for the perfect headshot. Taps up the 2K. Soy in 30 seconds has to win a 1-on-4. At least has the bomb on his back so can extend that timer. No utility. Backstabs inbound. TJP will take his time. Combined with Gump. Secure that kill. And Australia in their 5th round. Breaking the backs of the economy here for New Zealand. Cash in bank, but better to hold on to it for the round 15 bye.
And it just feels as if finally Australia has been able to find that rhythm. This is 2 very convincing rounds in a row, back-to-back, that they've been able to win. And for what seemed to be the entirety of this first half, the reset didn't even seem like it was on the cards. Money was flowing. There was so much cash to work with. Now with New Zealand not being able to find much success in the last couple of rounds, not even being able to get a plant in that last one, means that going into round 14, they've got to protect themselves to get a full investment come the last of the first half.
They're going pretty heavy-handed with this buy, though. I thought it would be light pistols. They're down to 15, 12, 13k. Fast play in towards the B site, and we'll try and outpace them with the pistol plays. It's a 2-for-1 with Gumps, the USP coming out good. The AWP not quite as successful, though. The bomb is on the floor, at least. New Zealand have lost that, but they have gained a 3-on-3. CTs have rotated on Masto. Savage, with his own AWP, lands on Val. Sees the second, sees that bomb as well. Firing back to force out peaks, connect on Smiller. And Licky is there to cut down the last. So, 6th on the board of Australia. New Zealand back in for one final buy to close out the T-side half.
We finally saw some of that double AWPing that we know that Team Australia have with the players on the roster. Gump, one of the B-site anchors, has decided to bring in the big green, both in round 14 and now even into round 15 on a reinvest. New Zealand's found themselves in a position where it looked like they were striking for double digits in the first half. The best that they can hope for now is 9.
AWP v AWP battle won out by the T-side, however. Savage first to fall. Slippery with that kill. Gun was left out to the apartments control. And for the time being, as they make their way in from mid over on New Zealand. TJP can't see anything here in snipers. Their smoke is going to fade, though. Spots one, takes the trade back, can't see the second, and that costs him.
A Slippery Doing well out here from the mid control. Licky towards underbalk. Hasn't been cleared. Gets himself one. Not quite the second.
Man on site. Hats, though, engaging, finds Soy, brings it to a 2-on-2. JTR can't get the through smoke kill, but can get the one out towards short. Hats, less than 40 HP to go in for this clutch. Has the kit, has no utility. JTR, first port, of course. Slippery on the outside of the site, though. Or blocking on the cross and connects his shot. First time around, make it 9-6 on the board for New Zealand at the T-side.
Yeah, Hads did very well there from Team Australia in that first half, putting on nearly 20 kills, a lot of impact around that connector top stairs position, but across the board, the numbers just didn't quite work out there. I think we only saw a late resurgence from Australia when it comes to the back end of that first half. For New Zealand, they've got to be very happy with their performance that they were able to offer.
Australia move on to the CT side on the back foot. An opportunity. Start returning fire and doing some damage. Smoke set as the T's make their way out early. Got Smilodon. CT spawn at the ticket booth. Gump's going to get the bomb down for free, though. The smoke in the way of the contact over on the New Zealand side. Australia, at least that money bonus, but now working on a bit more. TJP finds two outside of jungle. Val and Slippery is going to fall.
And now Tissoy is just hoping for a way back in. Try and work a pick out here from the jungle control. Savage is still making it difficult for the CT side. And now Simodon out here from CT finds himself out towards the triple box. And he's just sandwiched from 2 points of contact out there from the top of Balk and from that jungle position. Just can't isolate either of those kills individually, and Australia work out with a pistol round victory. I think it all really started here by TJP and that double kill that he was able to find.
Savage caught a pretty slick double of his own right as well from that connected position, turning onto the player on site. You mentioned sandwich between two T-side players, so not much that last man could have done. New Zealand down to the much harsher eco. No force buys in the second. They'll just bring the USPs out. Couple of HGs here and there as well to try to dish out some damage, but a hard stack in towards the B site as Australia lean into A.
And I think if there's ever going to be a rotation from the short control towards connector to get themselves in for a retake to look for exits, that Mac-10 from the chair position and now into connector could do some damage and try and see if they can farm up some cash. New Zealand for the gamble stack out towards B. Unsuccessful.
Call it a gamble for a reason. This time it didn't pay off. Again, let's see what kind of money they can gain out of the SMG. That's the key focus right now for Australia. Hats does tap up one hen. Indeed, Gump does come through with a kill onto Soy. The nade's doing a lot more damage than they'd be comfortable with in Australia. Gump still hunting for that man of Slippery. Val and JTRs are covering their own bases to ensure that nobody can take them down or otherwise just get exit frags in this crossfire position. Finally, Slip's going to go down in his own right, and Gump will only find that one Mac-10 frag, so not as valuable in this particular round, but ultimately all five are alive for Australia, so it won't matter too much.
And the core of Team Australia have actually been to quite a lot of closed qualifiers in the recent few months, coming close to qualifying to the RMR, not quite making it to ESL Challenger Melbourne, not having just what it takes to make it to Dallas either, losing some of those spots to the best teams in the region. So to now know that they're representing the region, to put themselves in a position that only one best of three will get you to that land spot. Australia have been able to fight a fairly decent comeback. Again, they were, what, 3-8 down by 5 rounds? They've now found the difference to be only 1.
New Zealand will get their first chance to truly put themselves back on the board here. CT side, bring out the rifles, the pistol, and eco lost. But Australia stand to gain the lead from here. If they can convert this round and convert the eco, then it's going to be all positives for them. New Zealand know this, so they have to take this one.
Now, rather than upgrading that Mac-10 into a rifle, they're going to use this as a bonus round, keep the economy strong. Not a lot of utility to work with on this CT side. And not many players have decided to drop down with the investment to allow that further util. Even the kit basis isn't there. And TJP is getting complete respect, full control of mid.
Only one player lacking the helmet here on New Zealand, so if Gump faces Val, then it might end up being disastrous for Val's own part. Any other kill, however, is going to be more of a bonus here for the CT Mac-10. Valhalla does catch Savage off though. TJP turns on towards one, sprays back on the second man, not quite as effective. Hats, Molotov set. You can see that smoke missed out there towards Connect to Jungle. TJP and Hats still get their taps though, bring it into 2 men left on the New Zealand side. The bomb plant will be secured. And Slippery goes down. All left to 1 man to save.
And TJP's been very impressive on the T side. He started off with the pistol. It's now gone into the opening rifle round where he's been able to exploit impact out from that jungle control, even putting pressure onto Tissoy. There should be no chance that this FAMAS saves into the next round.
9 HP, flanked, still 20 seconds to go. Dead. Nice and effective there from Gump to close out the last. But you're right about TJP. 3 kills for him in the entries. New Zealand were throwing up pressure, but Australia still able to style their way out of that round. And again, a key victory in the rifle, leaving no money left for New Zealand. An eco base is a half buy with the upgrade pistols and the Kevlar on several individuals. Slippery's not going to go for it, I don't think. Just the deagle, not the armor. And a perfect chance for Australia to get the lead.
And it's such a good showing from one of the veteran players of Australia, of Hats, to put on a good showing here. Even out towards a short control as TJP again starting to go into an aggressive split into the B site now.
Padding his stats as if he didn't have enough multi-kill rounds already. 3rd on the board for him. Soy down. 2 more to get. Anti-eco ace perhaps. Burst through. Sees the quadra. Not quite. Smilon's going to try and protect himself. That was right around that corner. Does catch him. So denial of that ace at the very least. Australia shouldn't be sweating that. They might sweat about getting that AK back out of the hands of Val. Smilodon going down, flanked in from the ace site as well. So yeah, they are going to try to take this rifle out of his hands.
And with the momentum completely shifting of this entire map, this is going to put quite a bit of pressure on New Zealand. Go to the next rifle round where it starts getting uncomfortable. You had a solid lead. You were up by quite a lot of rounds, and now there's been a return. Australia's been able to find some strong form. A lot of these rounds, they've had mass players staying alive, which is only generating so much of a bonus of the cash flow. New Zealand need to answer back quickly. They've got money to drop an AWP over towards JTR if they want. He can even go glass cannon if Slippery doesn't want to drop it. It will be dropped, so they will get the big green out. Australia finding themselves up by 1 and looking to press it even further.
I think, if memory serves me correctly, this is the first time that Australia have been in the lead so far in this map. They've tied up against New Zealand with the back of the pistol in the first half, but then they pulled away. Australia never really were able to regain control until now. TJP found first. Slippery finds Gump next. You said New Zealand needed to formulate an answer. That's what they're doing. 5 on 3. Damage has been done to at least 1 CT here. But a lot more return to the Australian side.
This has been an excellent start from New Zealand. You had an aggressive play from JTR working down there at underpass in the bottom of mid. A pick out there to the B side from Slippery too. And now Australia are desperate on the return. This is such an uncomfortable round to recover.
Two CTs marked up on the defensive towards the B site, so even a bomb plant's going to be difficult. Molly sent and back up so quick to make its way in. Licky checking short, so desperate to find that pick in. Indeed, he does find the man. Soy down, but 2 more CTs rotate to take his place. Val picks up 1, trades from Licky. Decent with the transfer towards Val as well. Smilodon trades it back, tries to hold contact to the forward man. All on Hats now to clutch.
Oh, this is winnable. This is very doable to come through from Hats because he's been able to isolate 1 pick. He plants that bomb, taps it to draw the fight out in the open to get out to the right-hand side, and Hats is going to win it. It started off with Licky and it finished with Hats. An incredible recovery there from Australia.
And that's that veteran element. Exactly what we wanted to see from him. The experience going miles, and you were right, Licky started so well. It was the transfer onto the second and the third players, though, that gave the breathing room, that gave Hats the window opportunity. A duo effort from these two. The more veteran elements of the squad working well in tandem to keep New Zealand at bay, yet to score on the CT side.
And that may be the round that not only wins the map, but wins the series here from Australia. That could shape themselves up for everything. Val even force bought an M4 because of the max round loss bonus to make some damage happen. That's been dropped so quickly.
JTR at least gets one back, but he's answered so quickly of his own right. Slippery all alone. Deagle to try to see what other damage he can do, but ultimately New Zealand letting this map slip from their grasp. Their own pick. Did so well in the early game, but Australia have come into their own. At least they'll have the rifle round back in the next, but it's going to be lacking at least one key weapon. Val, as you mentioned with the force bite. No bomb plant bonus because it's CT side, obviously, so there's no real way that you can recover that cash unless you win the round itself. So down to FAMAS for him, AWP for JTR. And this one will set Australia up on victory row if they can take it.
And New Zealand struggling to find an answer here in the second half. And JTR has been involved in a couple of these opening attempts with the AWP towards mid. And this time around, he's taking a lot of burn damage, down to 28, and didn't even offer up a shot.
At least they won't know where that AWP's placed as of yet. The trade-off in the information game versus the damage probably isn't worth it here for New Zealand. JTR will count the rotate back in through the sniper's nest, back through the murder hole as well, because that smoke coming in at the right moment will force them to reposition. Val does at least find TJP, but Licky fast in the trade.
Just working a walkout from Gump too. Take a look out towards the A side, but it's actually been caught. Slippery there from under Dark was able to get the kill.
4-on-3 as a result. New Zealand holding on to the man advantage, but the HP is still so whittled down on two individuals. Hats will start walking his way into the A site, suppressed by that smoke. Hearing the footsteps coming, though, he knows that there's one player made his way towards CT spawn. Is he aware of the second man, Bo?
They're trying to see if they could walk on a contact. Be as silent as anything. New Zealand might actually offer up a bomb plant here and just play the retake with the man advantage. Hats is starting to walk further forward into the site directly. Still unknown of the two players deep towards CT. At least they've been able to clear out the majority of under Dark and closer towards a bomb site now.
30 seconds, bomb will get planted, protected out that short controller. Dish out some damage through the wall bangs. Out at ticket booth. AWP focused. Hats finds Smiller. 3-on-3 situation. Licky, I set AWP challenge. The CT's made their way into the bomb site, but Licky finds the soy. JTR returns fire though. Nade sent, flashes will keep him blinded. 2-on-2 situation. Smoke on the bomb, not on the defuse yet. All players are low HP. As Hats goes down, Licky's left alone to get caught by Slippery in New Zealand. Will be able to have themselves the 10th round, holding on to their first of the CT side and denying an important round for Australia's game.
It's still a very good effort there from Australia. You consider the idea that they're in a 3v5. It looks to be a very unwinnable round. They get the bomb plant forward. Licky's able to get a kill out towards mid. Hats is able to get one towards that jungle area. But it's the last two individuals from CT they can't quite deal with. And the retake comes through. JTR doing well with that AWP to find two. And New Zealand at least end the streak, at least find themselves up towards 10. But now it's about following up. Now it's about getting a couple of rounds in a row. And now the CTs are even running a double AWP setup.
Missed utility from them, though. Slippery can't set his own AWP up on the defensive line just yet. Was hoping he could suppress Australia. Himself in the position eventually. And from a bit of an aggressive peek with two flashes to support. One from himself, one from a teammate. Peek forward, spotted the shoulder. Forced to use his smoke here, but they might push ahead of it. Blind shots continue. Damaged up by the Molotov. 45 HP for the man. Back onto the bomb site.
Just a pressure point, though. It's forced a slight over-rotation. They're trying to bait out some util. Gum's making a play up to A, and he's dealt with the CT line. Now they've got full control to start working up on A and start exploiting the rotations. Val does at least drop Gum, so there's a return.
Didn't retreat back far enough. We saw him peek forward, get the kill, and just melt away. JTR melts Hats meanwhile. Advantage gained by New Zealand as Australia may have made a decent play to open up the round, but they've been unable to maintain that advantage. Licky's going to try and get it back. 3-on-3 as JTR falls.
Oh, this bomb could get dropped. No, it goes the other way. TJP gets another one of those all-important entries. And now for New Zealand, they've got to make a tough call. Do we retake or save? Man disadvantage. AWP for the retake if they go for it. 45 HP for the man as well. Sawyer's going to make his way in towards CT at least. Try and set something up back there. Need a kill pretty fast, though. Australia giving them absolutely nothing. It doesn't look keen on it. They got themselves in a position that nothing's presenting. TJP to look back out towards CT. What a tap that is. That's a wonderful kill towards Spawn directly.
Taps been pretty crispy in general in this matchup, haven't they? And Australia are right back on track. 13-10 over New Zealand. At least they hold on to that AWP, but the one round knocking the loss bonus back means the money's not ideal for the CT side here.
You might have to force it anyway. You're in a position where you're saving up an AWP. You want to try and get yourself in a position where you got to put pressure on. A safer option, of course, is to save and to buy very lightly around it. But for New Zealand, I think you need to start taking some risks now. You can't afford to let Australia have easy rounds and to get themselves closer to 16. Because losing your map pick could be the demise of the entire series here for New Zealand.
That's why I was saying earlier that Australia may have set themselves up for the series victory here on map 1 alone. Half invest for this one will allow them to get to 14 unless they can stand in their way. Spinadon can't. Flash is sent into the bomb site. They'll go. Bomb is just about on its way. So again, this should be 14-10. New Zealand will focus on the next round rifle buy. Keep the AWP in if possible. See what other damage they can do. Take the rifles out of their hands. I mean, the AWP's first contact out of the market controls a Gump. Get the kills. Hats following suit. Perfect tap on Valzal. JTR will not last. That is a 14-10 for the board of Australia.
And even though there's money here for New Zealand to reinvest into an AWP, you look at that there from Slippery and say, is that even necessary? That was quite aggressive for him to look for an exit kill towards market. Even 1 or 2 picks with the AWP wouldn't have made a massive amount of difference on resetting Australia. It means they can't run a double AWP setup. It means that the cash in the bank is going to be very minimal going into round 26. Australia are on victory row of trying to take Mirage.
At this point, you break the backs of economy of Australia by bringing the comeback, essentially.
That's it. That's the only way.
Damage is irrelevant. Savage. Set in towards that mid-control. Boosted up, looking into connector. Expecting JTR to go for the peak, but he's pretty passive in con. Meanwhile, Val peeks out of hats. Finds him over at ramp. Advantage sat with New Zealand.
Now, flash around the corner. Australia don't have more players towards that ramp position to offer up a trade. Instead, Licky's working in from underpass. You've got a couple of players of Savage and TJP to work in from the top of mid. Australia find themselves down by 1 and looking for that return. And for New Zealand, they've got to try and really put a stock hold into this round. Make sure they're playing the percentages, keeping a strong crossfire. They've actually got a read that it's going to be a B split, and it's being read quite well. You've got quite a lot of emphasis here from Australia, of TJP and from Ladder, and a couple of players out in the apartments to continue.
Caught with you 2 in hand. 5-on-3 making it for New Zealand here. TJP trying to frag back though. Turns on 2 unawares of the third man. Still looks to hunt. Calls that information out to the player over at the apartments. The AWP diving in. Known. Taps him back. Licky caught JTR and Australia bail themselves out of this one. Val 1-on-2. Coming in from the short control. Actually at underpass looking into the app's backstab. We'll waste some time getting here. But you might have to go for this.
And this has been another round, another uncomfortable situation for Australia that they're turning in their favour. Val is being watched by Savage too.
AWP ready for it. Lands him at first sight. 2K for him. TJP becoming the star though, entering onto that B site, ripping apart New Zealand's defensive. And it's map point for the Aussies.
And how frustrating must that be from Team New Zealand? Because they shaped up a very nice read. You got a man advantage. You've got 3 players to defend up against B. But it's TJP with that double entry. And we've seen it constantly here in the second half is Australia's individuals making super impactful plays.
Perfect shot from Savage. Val goes down, the start of the end times, it feels like, for New Zealand. TJP lightning fast on that sequence. 25 kills deep for him. As Smiladon and Soy are left to just lick their wounds. fall down in pieces and concede map 1 to Australia for a 16-10. One more tap for the road on TJP. And there it is, Mirage going the way of the Aussies.
Team Australia came off to a slow start at Mirage. They were down 8-3. They end up finding only dropping themselves 2 rounds from that position onwards. And I think for Team New Zealand, while it was a really good beginning, while we saw a lot of impact, it slowed down massively. And once Australia were able to get Hats into a good position, allowed TJP to start working the mid-control, offering up entries towards a bomb site, it was a rollover. That was a very good late first half and second half performance from Team Australia.
It's such a shame for Team New Zealand, of course, the idea that you've done so well in the opening half. We were saying at the beginning, it was like, this is a really good start from the New Zealand side on their own map pick. Looks like they could very well actually have this one in the bag. They might be able to break that whole map streak that we've seen Australia have against New Zealand historically down the years. But that second half performance, like you mentioned, massive resurgence there from Team Australia, and they deserve credit for that because that was stellar from stuff. TJP especially, man, what a game he had.
Yeah, he had a fantastic game, and I think we saw there were some pivotal rounds there in the second half. The 3v5 that they were able to work with Licky and Hats, the 3v4 that TJP were able to bring back. Some of these rounds where New Zealand had man advantages, had themselves the higher position, the more favourable position, but still, Team Australia coming into the fold.
And again, it's something what we've talked about during the pre-match, the fact that Australia could well be, or very much are, our favourites in this sort of series. I hold out a little bit of hope, though, that again, we could see that 3-map affair, because just look what they did over on that first map, right? For New Zealand, it felt like, yeah, this was going to be a chance for them to get into the series. But as you mentioned, Wade, we're losing out Mirage. Things do look a little bit more dire for the Kiwis now.
You've got to imagine that now moving into Inferno, with the way that Australia performed later on in that map, this is going to be very tough. And for Team New Zealand, mentally, they're going to have to stay very strong moving into map number 2. But all the positives, all the advantages go the way of the Aussies once again.
Absolutely, they do. Their own map pick coming up next here. Dwayne, so much positivity right now for the Aussies. I just have to say that, again, it's a bit more tragedy there from the New Zealand side. If there's one positive you could take away from this is the fact that, look, they've shown that in spite of all the advantages that Australia have in experience, in firepower, in the team core that they have there, like, they're still showing that they can host a decent fight, because I was writing them off pretty early. Remember, at the start of the show, I said before even the veto, I was looking at a 2-0 there for the Australian side. So New Zealand, I mean, is there much hope in terms of what they could do now going into map 2, or is it really going to be a write-off from here?
No, I think if they get off to an opening start, if they give themselves some early momentum, then there's rounds to work with. We saw that at the beginning of Mirage. They're able to string some very good rifle rounds together. JTR showed us some very good AWPing. I think it just felt in pressure moments and in late round situations, they fumbled the bag slightly, and that was a caveat that came back to bite them quite heavily and gave Australia some all-important rounds to start really mowing over towards the tail end.
We might need to see a little bit more positivity in the early game from their own part there over on the on that New Zealand side. They've shown that they can do some decent damage on Mirage. Can they do it for Inferno? We'll head towards a break and see whether the Australian map pick will indeed be 2-0. Don't go anywhere. A fantastic start from New Zealand. Ultimately was not good enough to take their map pick of Mirage. Australia come out on top, and now they look towards Inferno, where things can get a little bit more, well, potentially one-sided. I'm hoping not, Dwayne, because it still was a pretty impressive showing there from the Kiwis. I do have some concerns about that CT side, given how it was only a single round being gained by them. But look, like you said, Dwayne, if they can get an early start in, they can still make this a competent and fair Inferno.
We didn't see any Inferno coming through from them when it came to the Open qualifier, at least for Team Australia. We saw it a couple of times, and we saw it actually in some whitewashes. The Eliminators was a 16-4, and then in the Grand Final was a 16-5 with a 13-2 first half. So we know that Team Australia has had some very good Infernos off the back of the event so far, and I'm only expecting that to continue going here into the second map.
Well, look, looking back at that first map initially, obviously, we talked about some of the highlight players that we had over on that Australia side. Again, TJP was probably my standout pick for MVP for map number 1 because of how impactful he was in that second half. And considering it was in the second half where things looked over there from the Australia side, again, he might be the guy that will follow up here. I wonder how he looks on the actual scoreboard, though, because I never got the chance to see how the rest of the players sort of matched up. I wasn't sure if it was a one-man affair from his own part, because actually it's a good thing we actually got to see that, because Hats, of course, backing him up there. You got that young style, that newer element versus the veteran. Of course, both guys stepping up for Australia's side, and they do particularly well as a result of that.
Hats was a top performer out of Mirage, had 17 kills by the end of the first half. We saw that all-important 1v2 out to the B site with the assistance of Licky. And then for TJP, I think we saw a very explosive second half from him as well. Both players really shining on the T side, fighting those entries, opening up bomb sites. The first few rounds of the second half towards jungle, he was a nightmare for New Zealand. And I'd only imagine that that's going to continue going into the second map of both of those players being an incredible threat.
Indeed, they are. Again, comfortability now set in, ready for the Australia side as we move on to that second map, of course. And for them, like, you look at the star elements over on the other side of the board, and the numbers aren't quite as high for those top-end individuals. Of course, Australia being able to beat out New Zealand on pretty much every single stat, right? More kills, slightly more assists, less deaths. Even though those stats from half one to half two might significantly change, it just goes to show that, again, on the longer term, Australia had the one up.
Yeah, they did indeed. And for Team New Zealand's point of view, fundamentally towards that second half, we could see the cracks, we could see the struggles. So moving into map 2, while it's still going to be difficult for them, they just need to, again, stay mentally strong. They showed a very impressive first 8, 9, 10 rounds of the game. It was when we got deeper on and when Australia started to knuckle in that we saw them take complete control. So for Australia's standpoint, they know that while they may have been able to get off to a slow start on map number 1, now they're on home turf, and now their main objective is to carry on TJP's form and to carry on with a 2-0 victory.
Yeah, he claims MVP of that last map, rightfully so. Again, towards the ending half, towards the ending few rounds, he really bailed them out, did some incredible things over the course of that second half. And again, you have to just give him absolute credit for what they've been able to do there over on that Australian side. Mirage, again, being said and done, the 16-10 that favours the Aussies. And now it's going to have to be a comeback moment on Inferno, right? There's going to be a lot of effort that needs to get put in by New Zealand to try and pull this back from the brink, because they are essentially resting on the brink, right? One more map to go. Australia will secure themselves a spot in the Asian Championship, and with the way that things have sort of gone so far in this series, you can imagine that they'll be able to worm their way out of any position that New Zealand can put them in, right? We saw many man disadvantages in the second half being turned around by Australia. Great individual performances from Hats and TJP, of course, to bail out multi-kills. Like, so many positions where you thought Australia might have been on the back foot, but they're still able to surge forward.
I think for Team New Zealand, I mean, reflecting on map 1 now into map 2, they've got to look at how they can slightly change the protocols in man advantage situations, because, again, you are right. There was a lot of circumstances where they had the one-up, where they had the advantage for the majority of rounds in the second half and just weren't able to close it down, whether that's a communication point of view, whether that's peaking on the contact and where people's positions are in those sort of situations. That's going to have to be reflected on and tightened, because if that isn't sort of strengthened moving into map 2, we'll see exploitations again from Team Australia when it comes to that corner.
Well, again, we did see quite a fair amount of great positivity in the early half and the first a few rounds there from Team New Zealand. Again, they got quite a lead. It was 8-2, I think, at one point.
8-3.
When they secured the half. 8-3. Okay, well, yeah, it's still pretty dominant of their own right? 5 rounds in the lead to secure yourself the half and the T-side line. Like, it does show that they've got a lot of potential in terms of what they can do against the Australian side. It's a case of just carrying that on for an entire map rather than just one half, because they really petered out over on the CT side. And I hope that doesn't happen here for Inferno. Again, we want to see a competitive series. Obviously, Australia walking into this one as the heavy favourites. You can expect them to win this whole matchup, but they've just got one more map to go. And New Zealand, look, again, they've got a lot of information they can pull from. If there's any map that they can formulate a strategy or a counter tactic to, it would be something like an Inferno.
And just knowing that for Team Australia, again, it's a map that we have seen picked a few times in the last recent history of the cause itself. I think for Team New Zealand, this is going to be a further more difficult affair moving into map number 2. We now know that both teams coming into this series today hadn't dropped a map. It's finally happened. For Team Australia, keep it clean. Look to try and take Inferno. Not even need to move into a strong map of Nuke as a decider.
Absolutely, you're right about that. Like, just as you mentioned, keep it simple, keep it easy, just cruise your way onto the victory that should rightfully be yours in the case of the Australian side. So I can expect some pretty standard stuff of their own, right? I believe they'll be starting things off on the T side, because I think New Zealand get to pick the half as is standard. I think they pick CT as well, so we'll just get that confirmed when we jump into the matchup itself. But any sort of takeaways, right? Like from the New Zealand side, obviously we talked about TJP and Hats being the great elements over on that side. We saw some numbers at the top end of the board that weren't quite as significant over on New Zealand's part of things, but are those guys the kind of stars to surge up and become the big elements here for New Zealand?
I mean, for JTR, we saw even in that second half, he was getting quite a few opening picks for that AWP. I felt as if he was quite consistent in the first. We might not see as much of a comfortable game on Inferno. Again, T-side AWPing's very difficult on that map. We'll probably see more impact from him on that CT line. But across the board, I think for the riflers, there were some quiet moments. Even though it was consistent in the first half, we need to see more. We need to see more star prowess. We need individuals to stand up in certain moments and bring round victories itself. That was one thing that Team Australia were able to do. That's one thing that Team New Zealand wasn't able to do.
Yeah, again, sort of just looking at their position and seeing what they were able to do in that early half, I do give at least a little bit of credit over to New Zealand to be able to pull off something out of the hat, but it's not going to be easy at all against this Australian side. I'm holding out hope, again, my fingers are crossed in that sort of sense, but when you have a guy like TJP going as ham as he is, it's going to be very difficult to mount up to the firepower basis. The positive, I think, would be the case that there's a chance he probably won't have a similar sort of second map unless he's really consistent in that sort of sense, right? Again, he's been playing with the core of this Encore sort of side. They've been able to do a lot of great things with him as of late. So I'm curious to see how they're going to enable that over the course of map 2.
And just knowing as well for Team Australia, the idea that you are a core of a team, okay, it might be mixing ever so slightly going into this qualifier. You are still a team at the end of the day. They're going to have a lot more of their protocols on point, a lot more of the timings that are going to be able to offer up a different, unique perspective up against a mixed team. And for Team New Zealand, they've got to consider it's not often that we have a regional matchup. It's not often we get an opportunity like this of one match to get to land. Let's make the most out of it. Let's try and work as hard as we can into map 2, send it into a third, and just see, can we take it one step at a time? Can we focus on Inferno, get that victory, and then try and see if we can move it on to Nuke?
And again, like, the key thing about New Zealand is that they'll have the counteraction, or they should have some counteraction protocols to be able to counter what they're going to do on their own map. But it's the case that you could even say, like, the argument could also be there for something like a Mirage, right, where they would have more information to pull from the core. It wasn't quite good enough. That experience, being able to outplay your awkward positions, is what gives Australia the edge in this sort of context here. So is it going to be a requirement for New Zealand to get a decent opening start like they did on Mirage to take this map?
You'd have to expect so, whether it be in the first half or even in the second. I think getting away with an opening pistol, an opening rifle round, an opening force buy, whatever it may be, set the pace on early, get the rounds up. They found themselves 4-1. They then found a stretch of 8-3, but from that point onwards, it was only 2 more rounds being gained. So I think we know that when we get deeper into the map, when we get further into the rifle rounds, that's where Team Australia are going to show their quality.
And that's the key thing I think you can improve upon right now for the New Zealand side to carry on that momentum. It's probably the key thing that they were missing over on Mirage, the key thing that they'll be able to have to mop up here for Inferno, right? It's less about individuals and statistics in that sort of sense, and more about how the team sort of carries on their form from that early sort of period, and whether they can gain that early period as well. Another key thing to consider, right? Your comfortability on your own map pick. You can gain the pistol, you can gain the start. From there on, it feels like you're in the driver's seat. That might not be quite as easy on the Australian pick of Inferno.
And just knowing that for Team Australia, again, we've had a very good showing out from Hats, a very good showing in for TJP. Haven't even seen a massive amount from Savage. We saw some AWPing from him. We know that Gump was doing some secondary AWPing on that CT side of Mirage in the last couple of rounds. Probably won't see that out on Inferno. We might have to just see one of them. And maybe depending on the positions that they're playing, depending on where they want to shift the AWP, we might see Savage picking it up for a few rounds. We might see Gump picking it up for a few as well. All we know for Team New Zealand is that we'll see JTR bringing it out more consistently.
I will say that I think JTR won the majority of the AWP battles over the course of that Mirage. And in general, I should say that I wasn't really all that impressed with the AWP play of the Australian side. So there is always that, again, that key thing that you might have the advantage in the big green gun, and that could be something that they could exploit over on the New Zealand side. So maybe you do put more emphasis towards the AWP. Maybe you do try set JTR up to do some decent work, because he was top of the board in that last map. So try find those fights, try use that AWP to perfection, and if they bring out the AWP of their own right on the CT side, focus fire on punishing those guys, because there were moments where Savage was pressured heavily and he wasn't quite able to use that AWP to great effect.
And I think knowing that now you're going into Inferno, it's going to test the calling ability and the readability as such for Team New Zealand on that city side, to get an idea of where the defaults are being run, where they can find the pressure points, how they can fight back from man disadvantaged situations, how they're holding onto their utility, retaking top banana, using the anti-rush nades as well, and just all sort of protocols as such, because I think Inferno is a map that, especially if you are a solid team or a solid mix, as long as you run a strong and cohesive default, you're going to struggle on that CT side against it. So for Team New Zealand, it comes down to creating impact, holding on to man advantages, and of course closing the rounds down, one of the struggles that they found on map 1.
Yeah, significant potential for that AWP to become the patchwork, if you will, over from that New Zealand side. So I look forward to seeing what JTR can do when he breaks out that big green gun and you know, use it against a player like a Savage if he does break it out of his own right. I do wonder whether or not they're going to change up strategies over on the New Zealand side, though, because I do think they had a lot more success when they had the regular rifles out by comparison to the AWP, and again, putting more emphasis onto those weapons like a TJP, like a Hats, doing the work that they did over the course of that first map to carry that on into the second one as well, just with the AKs and the M4s rather than even bother wasting the money on the AWP, if it's not going to be that effective, of course.
And we know Inferno T-sides can be more difficult to have explosive plays and those quicker setups. We saw quite a bit of it from both teams actually out of Mirage. Think about the T-sides, those short pops, the B pops out to the apartments. We know that both teams quite like every now and then to change up that tempo, have something slightly quicker. That might have to be just like a top banana flash, half wall, try and see if they can just put some pressure points on, but it won't be as quick. It definitely won't be as fast with those explosive plays as we saw out on map 1. It will be a lot slower, a lot more by the book as such when it comes to the defaults.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of plays into the maps themselves, right? Like, you, in Mirage, you have a lot more breathing room on the T side, whereas in Inferno, you have to fight for it a bit more in that own sense. So you've got to get into the apartments, you've got to get mid and banana control, and you can be challenged on the CTs, or the CTs can challenge you pretty effectively in that sense. So yeah, it does make sense that this will be a much more slower paced matchup. That might bode well for New Zealand, right? To be able to, again, suss out what the strategy is going to be from that Australian side, right? And if they've got a playbook in mind, if they've already got the research done, then actually that could be favourable. Again, I'm thinking about theoreticals right now for New Zealand and what they could do to be able to pull this one out of the hat, because I don't want them to go down completely whitewashed here. I think everyone wants to see them do some decent work, and I'm hoping that they've got the little these in the back of their mind. They've got a decent strategy guide and a playbook as to how they want to play this one out. So for me, I'm just looking forward to see what they'll be able to do, especially in the opening few rounds in the opening half.
I just want to know how fast out of the gate Australia is going to be able to respond. Again, they had a 13-2 half in that grand final where they played Inferno. We saw that the first half of Map 1 and Mirage wasn't quite the same, so you wonder which team Australia are we going to see?
Let's find out exactly which one we're going to see. We're going to waste no further time getting into Map 2. Australia up by 1, need to take this, and they'll be off to the Asian Championship. It's the pistol round. New Zealand on the USP, stacking towards the B site. A little bit of contact from Slippery. Looked out the apartments, immediately falls back and calls for backup because he saw a lot of players there in second mid.
And they've got a single flash to get themselves out towards a short control. A further smoke that can go down towards that Moto sight line. JTR and Silmadon playing out here from long, already establishing a contact.
Oh, perfect shot on Savage. USP domes him in, looks for a little bit more, swings out towards brackets, but sees absolutely nothing. The player on short's already made his way in. TJP watching out of the hay bales, catches one kill. Slippery down. Second man out towards long is going to be a concern. The USP's checking out pit just in case Moto Smoke comes in, engages Philadon and keeps him at bay. The bomb's on its way in from the apartments. It will go down for Australia, and they cut one off. Hats inbound from mid, dealt with by Val.
JTR tries to get a pick out there towards a porch position, and now Licky and Gump are in themselves in a post plant. Gump stuck on the side directly.
Block out in the open, takes that fight, gets JTR. Smilodon going to try and act towards it. USP taps, and now Licky no. Taps from Smilodon continue. 2K to his name, and it will be New Zealand with a retake and a pistol win.
Australia actually put themselves in a pretty good stance. Yes, they might have lost the opening pick, but you saw the way that TJP was able to exploit a very aggressive, unknown protection area as such behind the hate card to force out that rotation towards the middle of the site. Hats would have liked to have found 2 kills from bottom banana, but only found 1. At least there's a bomb plant and an opportunity to buy it up.
And again, New Zealand find themselves in with the start, just like they did over on Mirage. The pistol gained, Australia fought back. And a much better buy for them this time, as you mentioned, the bomb plant bonus. Bring in the rifles, the Galils. The Eagle Tech 9 are certainly a better force buy than they had on the CT side of Mirage. New Zealand already losing 1. Perfect shot from Savage. Response is there from Smilodon, though.
Trying to make sure that they offer something back. Now, there is a slight tempo shift up here towards top banana, and Val is completely alone out here at the sandbags.
In the corner, still stands his ground, gets hats, dealt with by TJP, 3-on-3. Smokes out towards the CT, crosses Australia, will look to burst into that B site. Only 1 man left in JTR, Resmoke comes down to ensure that does not fade. Trying to look for a gap, but he can't quite find one.
Now, Savage was hoping that he could cut a rotate down from the mid control. Spam comes in nicely onto Gump. That drops the bomb out to the open now.
Footsteps giving up the ghost in that respect. JTR still looking for more, though. Catches TJP, and Savage is in a 1-on-3 now. Known to the bomb site. He's aware of JTR, aware of the 1 player back towards CT. Has no info on the 3rd man. Challenging to the CT position, and JTR just sticks the landing. Perfect for the 3K. Perfect for another retake on New Zealand.
Hey, you've got to think, though, for Australia, they'll probably buy it up again. Bomb plant bonus, the loss bonus is getting stronger, and the idea that 2 players dropped. And they might want to try and see if they can get themselves into a rifle investment. And New Zealand off of the back of a very good sequence there from JTR. And I think if that spam kill didn't come through to give themselves the man advantage, we could have been looking at a very different round. A vital sequence from him out to be.
Into that second fight certainly turned the tide, most certainly in New Zealand's favour, and an irreparable round there for Australia. Again, the early game sits with the CT side, sits with the Kiwis at 2-0. You mentioned Australia considering the force buy, and that's exactly what they'll do. Now towards the AK on 1. Mac 10 on 1's going to be the weakened weapon for Licky's part. Could still do well against Soy. Now the helmet on his own part of things. The rifle's just setting a very careful default for the Aussies.
Now slow it down completely. And you've got JTR and Val just maintaining that half-wall control to the top of Banana. And New Zealand not putting a massive amount of pressure on taking map control away. Savage now walking on a contact out to brackets.
Smell it on court. Player on site, player at pit. Incendiaries are forced to T-side to rethink their strategy. Smokes also keeping suppressed as Hats, meanwhile, tries to act out towards long, but not focus on the site. Might cut rotations from JTR. Eventually does think better of it and lean out towards the split. Australia... Molotov sent in, shoot it, forced Say out of the way. M4 still watching, still waiting. Hats leans forward though. They've unaccounted for the long control. The back's turned to Slippery, so now Soy with all of the work to do. Gets that one pick in. Mac 10's facing him, finds him into the smoke. And from there, it should be a save for New Zealand. Australia will get their first round.
Just a very good contact coming up from jungle. You could see that wrap being exploited out to Moto. And then even the two players from Dig just walking on a contact, putting some pressure down there towards that pit control. And New Zealand find themselves in a position where, yes, you won the pistol and you won the anti-force by going into round number 3. And that's where things start turning around. You'll be able to save on to 2 M4s, double eco status for the likes of Tasoy. So probably try and see if they can still force the buy down. And money floats slightly better for Slippery and Slimadon. New Zealand losing out their first round. A good return by Australia.
Finding their start in this matchup, looking to try catch up as well. Hunting down the last 2 CTs, but ultimately shouldn't reach them in time. Those 2 rifles stay in for the CT forces, giving a bit of a basis to try and buy around here if they wanted to force the issue. Money's pretty respectable. That's what they'll do.
Australia know that if we're able to come through into round number 4, this will give us leverage into start working a lead, getting a streak together and putting ourselves in a prime position like we were in map 1. I wonder if there's going to be a slightly more aggressive and risk take being made. Slippery trying to see if he can get an opening scout kill down from bottom mid. At least he does damage onto TJP.
Tag to 31. Not bad, but ultimately not the frag. Australia lean into the banana control. Savage with the HEs. Turning away from flashes, playing anti-flash position against the CT side. Boost perfect for JTR. Shoulder sticking out, and that's all you need.
Get a molly out there towards the sandbags. It's going to indicate that there's no more control up here towards top banana. Now notice how we're seeing a bit of a gamble stack, a rotation in from CT to keep 3 out to the B site here from New Zealand.
Hats turning away from aggression, coming into the half. Wall perfect from Val, not even flash supported, didn't need it. Hats was turned away. 4 on 4 gain, but the firing squad turns on Soy. And now Slippery with it all to do here. First shot of the scout catches Gump, finally getting that kill, looking for the next 2 men as well. Out towards the short control, Spinadon's going to go down. Val does well to get that first and that second, bring it into a 1v1 with Bomb in his sights. Will get picked up and spotted at the edge of the smoke. There's a gap right there. USP pulled out, Savage on 9 points of health. And Val can close out the round. They 3rd on the board of New Zealand.
And that's a massive clutch coming through from Val. Rotating out towards that B site really quickly on. I think you mentioned it there, Jay. Hats turning away from the flash, expecting a pop to come through from the half wall. In fact, it was just Val swinging in onto a contact, and that was the returning kill to get him to rotate back out to the A site. Ended up getting a quadra in the end there. New Zealand working on Val with the clutch situation.
Perfect stuff from him. keeping Australia at bay, but they will go back in with another buy. The money's certainly there for the T-Sign. Tech-9 being the key issue for them, but 2 SMGs back from New Zealand means that they're not that much better off. 3 M4s versus the 4 AKs, though. Those will be the players to watch out for. Early damage done to TJP. Could pass that weapon off to Gump as well.
Now, this is a huge swing round for both of these squads. Now, they'll realize the importance on taking round number 5. Val might even get flashed in. You've got JTR playing out here towards CT spawn at the moment.
Flash forward, spotting one. Unawares of the second man. JTR with the kill. Val with the follow-up as well. Both players dismantled from the top of Banana. The Tech-9 will just grab that rifle, fall back with it. Meanwhile, TJP goes down out towards the mid position, so it's all going New Zealand right now.
And very similar to Mirage, getting off to a good start, allowing themselves to peter off to the exact same scoreline of 4-1. A slightly unorthodox setup out there to the B side, a bait and switch on the contact, close up there to the first oranges and a player out towards CT. Gump does get 1 kill. Now, if they can exploit Val to the back of the side towards Dark, this could actually make the round winnable.
We'll get that bump to cross, and there's a player at CT to try and watch out for it. Damage being done. The player on backside is dealt with, and Savage finds Tsoy. Okay, 2-on-2. Gump look towards the banana position. 2 CTs in, and they could well line up for him. He engages one and taps up to the head of the next. A quadra for him as he steps up for Australia the same.
And how many times have we seen this, Jay? Just situations that look completely unwinnable. Australia working a 2v5 out there to the B site. My goodness, this should never be happening. JTR peeking by himself, the player out from Dark hiding a Val, and then Savage deals with the rotator to Soy from CT. Gump gets 2 kills towards Banana. Frustration must be there on the faces of New Zealand.
Especially now the economy's been broken. Fast charge up towards mid, and Hats is still tapping heads. Slippery down. Spinello at least gets that 1 pick back with the Mag 7, but Licky and Savage just have the mid control completely marked off. 2 versus 4. They get that 1 pick and dropping that bomb onto Soy, but Gump's again able to respond to it. JTR left alone, back out towards long. Smokes are clearing, so you should get challenged soon. Australia in full control now. New Zealand's early start has been cut down early the same. Did not get allowed to get the half before Australia got into the game itself. They're going to equalize, and they should find an eco off the back of this round.
And we might look back at round number 5 and think of the differences that this would have made to a comeback here from Australia very early on. And JTR, 1v2, players already out towards Banana. We actually might go for this now.
Australia might bottle this the same. This will be a 1v3 for JTR here. Leaning back in, Incendiary stone on the bomb itself. There's no defuse kit, no smoke either for JTR. Mr. Tap forward, try and look for the man, try bait him out, but ultimately he knows that he hasn't got time for this. Got to run for it, got to save the rifle. Gump's going to give chase though, try to take it out of his hands if possible. Just missed the marker on catching the man as he gets out towards underpass and will hold on to the gun. Australia will get their 3rd round, but a bit more expensive than they'd be comfortable with for me. Indeed, 3 apiece.
And New Zealand will just buy quite lightly around this safety in AK. Australia have now got 1 round to make the difference, to take that lead and to keep pressing themselves further ahead. And I think we're seeing the impact from Hats once more, aren't we, Jay, from map 1 to map 2? And those kills coming through from Banana out to mid have been incredibly vital. And I think a player that we'll watch out for as the series only continues.
Straight in for Licky, spinning on down. Flash in to try and get the Banana control. However, they're just getting dismantled here. Val gets nothing for his trouble. Even the AK gets picked up by TJP, which actually is a very smart call there. Invest light into the Mat 10, upgrade, and get all 5 players back in with the rifles. It makes a lot of sense. Australia, a lot of value in their economy game. New Zealand now up to the rifle buy once again. But again, Australia have taken a much more earlier lead.
And New Zealand's return across the board's not going to feature a massive amount of util, and the lack in the kit department as well. Starting with 3 players out towards A, Slippery out to the pit control, and TJP and just working Banana. Now, they're actually getting this pretty much for free. This isn't a contest at all. New Zealand are playing very passive on the B side.
Licky's caught 1 aggressor, meanwhile, to Soy down. TJP, the AK, sees 1 player poking out. Double up. And Australia are now completely in control, fully on fire at this stage, with no signs of being put out by the fire brigade. New Zealand burned by the flames, and now forced away with the M4s to save once again a 5th on the board of the Aussies.
Exploiting quite a few mistakes in that round. First off, Desoy did kind of caught himself in a lack of timing, very late getting himself into a position out there towards Boiler, just got seen by Licky. And then rather than flashing and retaking top banana, they go in dry on a contact. The spacing is way too wide. And TJP is always going to find 2 kills there. And New Zealand, while it was a 3-1 beginning, has now turned into a round streak for Australia. And players even falling. Nate stuck out there towards a pit control. Hats dropping in towards the sort of mini position too. So New Zealand, they tried to save a couple of individuals. Not to be, though.
Very important rifles lost there. See how effectively Australia picked them apart in this round. Only 1 trade was gained by New Zealand. And they've just got all the momentum in their favor, right? The situation at hand sees that Australia, right now, they are in a winning position. Not in the scoreline, but in terms of the way that they're playing, the way that they're outpacing the New Zealand side. And the CTs have got to put a stop to it relatively soon. Stop this scoreline from getting out of control. They can't do it in this round because they've only got Deagles. They could do some damage, but just look at the way they're playing. TJP, quick burst to the head of Val. 1 more player on the bomb site. JTR only with the USP. He doesn't stand a chance here. At least Milladon gets 1 back. It's a 4-on-2 for the Aussies again.
It's a returning kill. Gump's out here towards the apartment, so he might try and cancel that AK to be saved and deal with Slippery. And Smilladon, well, this is a very uncomfortable position because he's going to get sandwiched completely.
Hide himself in under. Yeah, the footsteps coming in the T-side line. Maybe isolate this 1 pick. Indeed he does, but that's information given up. 20 seconds to survive. Gump comes in to close out the last. Make it a 3K for him. No rifles spared for New Zealand. They can buy back into round 10, though. This will be the key point of stopping. They have to get this one in my eyes.
A double AWP set up for New Zealand. I think they realised themselves that we've been struggling with the opening man advantage department. Let's change it up. Let's have an AWP play out towards A. Let's have an AWP out to B. Give ourselves a defining factor to allow Australia's streak to end. 5 in a row now for the Aussies.
Double AWPs for New Zealand. JTR's already tagged up so heavily in the Banana Peak. 2 T-side players make it their mission to put him out of commission. Damwell got close to it, but still stuck at the 5-on-5.
That's just regrouping out here towards top banana. Now, Smiller's going to start rotating from CT or consider himself in a position to be a rotate entity. Australia have still got the likes of Licky playing out there from the mid-control. Nade stack going down towards Coffin from Hats. And a resmoke that could just continue to be a double pump. Just Troy with them.
Oh, JTR's lucky to be alive with that HE placement. 1 point of health for the big green. And Val can do well to get that 1 frag. Hats will be forced to trade it. Many more T-side players right behind him as JTR does not last long against Savage. Bomb plant will be secured. 4-on-3 for Australia and New Zealand. Logic dictates that being a down a man on the B site, you should save. They'll look for exits. And maybe they might consider going for this. I mean, they're setting themselves up a bit more aggressive, but the smoke's not clearing. It will do now. Finally, they start to back off. But Gump even finds a pick, so exit's not even plausible there for the New Zealand side. Losing 1 more key rifle. Just left to lick their wounds once again. Give Australia a 7th round.
So it looked like New Zealand wanted to put themselves in a position where if a frag presented itself, they'll go for it. And you've still got Desoy playing out here towards the CT position. Just going to hold on to his weapon. They need to make sure both of these players stay alive. Smiller will be able to do so. And it does mean that there's going to be a buyback on the table. Both players can drop. It would have obviously been slightly easier with 3 players alive, but not to be. So there'll be a limited investment for Slippery getting an MP9. Australia, though, working the banana control fantastically.
Force of the good for the T side now. The streak will just keep on trucking. New Zealand now up against an AWP. Gump's got it back in his hands. Savage didn't really like it in that previous map, so a different approach again on the defaults. Gump leaning into the AWP. However, the AWP battle to be won by the T side this time. Australia now taking one of those key advantages that New Zealand had over on Mirage and now using it against them. Valhalla at least gets one back on Hat, so it is a 4 versus 4.
And it's trying to start to get more tempo out here towards the apps control, and Licky with the spam towards Boiler's been able to catch off Slippery. Val's going to get aggressive down from bottom banana, puts the pressure onto Gump and does catch him. The bomb's actually out there towards T-Ramp as well.
Our challenge was one more T-side player back here towards mid, though. Smokes are in the way. He'll get forced back, so he doesn't even get the information of where that bomb is. Wraparound should come through from TJP, meanwhile, as he opens up that A site. Bomb should make his way in relatively soon. Smilodon might cut them off before they can get the bomb down itself, but if TJP wins that fight, it's all for naught on those efforts here. Out towards the long control. Smiller has no idea where that last T-side player is at. Still wins that engagement, and Val sneaks in towards mid on Savage. So, now left to Licky. A 1 versus 2. Gets that first. Very winnable against Smiller as well. 15 HP for that man.
And all just comes down to the timing here from Spiller. Has he read the right play? There's going to be a smoke out there towards the top of Banana on a lurk, but Licky is starting to get more influence out here to the brackets control.
Full set of utility, double flash HE, and a smoke picked up for the man, so he's got all the resources he needs to defend against Smiller. Bomb will go down at default. And the retake will be on for the CT player. I mean, he'll get. I mean, I say on. I mean, realistically, it's still going to be difficult. Doesn't really have much of a choice in the matter, though. Licky knows where that bomb is in the open. Sat back, waiting. Smilodon are going to check out the pit control. Lean in to check position. Tap it once. But step was heard as well. HG sent his way, but evaded all the same. On the defusal, tap it again. Licky forced to make his way out. Force out a bait. Draw Smiller into the open and get that kill. Easy as chips. 3 on the board for his own kill count. And 8 on the board for Australia on the whole.
And this is just so similar to what we saw in map 1, that we got to a scoreline where New Zealand had a lead, and it just halters. It just stops with success. Went from 8-3 all the way up to them being down 10-16 with 2 extra rounds being won there from Team New Zealand. We've now seen you go on to Inferno, you're up 3-1. It's now 7 in a row to go to the way of Australia. And New Zealand found themselves in a decent opportunity in that last round, but even a 1v1 with that HP differential, that's not much of a winnable clutch scenario.
Key thing we were talking about was New Zealand's early starts. The one thing they had above Australia that made it so close in that last map. You were right about the parallels, it's just that the momentum is stopped far too early. Australia losing the first kill at least. New Zealand again working with a way into this round. Licky, look how far forward he gets with success. Smilodon didn't see that one coming. Spray through to the headshot. Now action out to the apartments where there's 2 CTs to hold it.
A brilliant entry out there to the jungle control. Getting that first individual crossfire into the apartments. Licky might be able to see the player towards the right-hand side first, and straight away they just break the crossfire apart completely. I think this has to be an instant save now.
I don't think they have much of a choice in the matter. 2v3. Australia. Again, New Zealand will look for an opening pick, but none are forthcoming. Smokes are in the way. They will back off. They will eventually commit to that save. At what point do you start becoming concerned about these economical calls, though, for New Zealand? Because, yeah, it makes sense in a 2v3, but at this point, we're going to go 9-3 on the Australian board. And New Zealand, just at this point, they need rounds. It's a difficult one to weigh up because, obviously, this is a very difficult retake, and Inferno is a difficult map to retake upon. But when do you back yourself if you're New Zealand?
I think it's just context of the round, isn't it? I don't think there's a certain round number or there's a certain scoreline differential that you have to look at and say, right, that's the one where you have to play the risk. I think you just have to pick your moments, and unfortunately, there's actually been quite a few rounds that haven't been winnable in the late round, so it is just so much better off saving onto the weapons. They need more advantages early on. They need further man advantages in post-planning scenarios to even consider retaking. Australia, so much success out there to the brackets pops. And New Zealand are just struggling to find a response.
Where do you go from here? Question New Zealand are asking themselves. You presented a potential solution, but it requires them to get a start in this round. Heavy stacking towards the A side. Val's going to be pressured over a B. 4 players there in a banana. Decent nade, though. Catches several players tagged. And it's so stunning to me to see a T-side double orb setup here from the Aussies.
It's not that usual. That's for sure. TJP is clearing out top banana. Now, it's just a jiggle here from Val to get a smoke down on a contact. It might even be exploited, though. Even when this smoke goes down, I think they just pop and just commit all the way through to the XE.
Only positive for Val here being that AK in place. Smokes in from both sides. We'll try and suppress, but they won't cancel for it. In fact, Licky straight through the smoke gets another kill. Headshot gain. TJP so deep inserted, and he's just going to wait here. Tap one, swing to the second, know exactly where he is. Forced him so far back. Soy can at least trade it, keep it in a manageable position. Still to the favor of Australia, and they extend that man advantage to 2. Savage catching Smiller back out towards banana. Slippery and Soy know that they've really got no chance in this. Suppressed by Spokes, even more so to secure it. Firing squad watching their positions. One man looking to press the issue and catch off Soy. And even the shots of the AWP getting closer and closer. Either way, there's no way into this round for New Zealand. Once again, locked out easily. Exits will start to go their way, but no more than that.
Savage is going to try and trap him in. Make it uncomfortable with CT's trying to save. You've even got T-side players wrapping into Speedway and towards CT. There's no way that Slippery's going to be able to hold on to this rifle at all. Double digits and a 10th being gained by Australia. And you can just see there from Val, he hasn't done a lot wrong. New Zealand try and gamble stack a site early on. He leaves him alone towards banana. On the contact, he puts the smoke down and just gets spammed. Licky just spamming bullets through that re-smoke towards CT, catches him off. You then have TJP getting aggressive towards Tree to cut a rotate quickly. And New Zealand have been simply outclassed in this best of 3 series.
Yeah, this has been stunning. Had an idea that this might end up being a bit of a whitewash matchup. I hoped it wouldn't be, given the early start we saw there on Mirage. But very clearly, this is the Australian map pick, and you can just see it in the way they're playing. TJP especially continuing his form, his domination from map 1 to map 2. Now backed up by Licky here. 3K in this one. There's anti-half by pistols. TJP there for the quadra, though. Still padded stats. Still bringing 11-3 for Australia. One more away from the most dominant half that you could feasibly, realistically manage. New Zealand just have no answers to what Australia have brought to the table today.
And they've been solid right from the open qualifier itself. A 16-4 against Eliminators out on Inferno. A 16-9 against Deadweight on Vertigo. A 16-10 against Godworks on Mirage. And then taking on Deadweight in that rematch of the grand final, getting a 2-0. And TJP with an ump out of all weapons. You got 2 umps, 3 umps, and an AWP and an AK. I don't know about this one. We'll see what happens.
Oh, they've got 1 kill, and they've got 2. Apparently, they're okay with it. Third man. Oh, Hats has got him as well. You don't need rifles for Australia. New Zealand getting wrecked by the SMGs. 1 AWP kill as well, just to make sure the rifles have some presence in this round. But ultimately, it's been a disaster half and a disaster round to close it. Hat's looking for his quadra, and that's exactly what he'll get out of it. Unbelievable for the Aussies. 12-3 at the half. New Zealand. What more do you say, Dwight?
Yeah, pure BM at the end there. But for Australia, they've obviously done very well in this first half. 11 rounds in a row, moving into the second, and New Zealand have struggled for a while out on Inferno to even keep some of the rounds competitive. Australia are looking to close this down, and this is very similar to that 16-5 that we saw on Inferno most recently with a 13-2 half. You just think, for New Zealand, can you get some hope in a pistol? Can you at least get yourself off to a somewhat decent start here in the second?
I think at this point you need the pistol. New Zealand just needs some sort of life, because Australia have stomped all over them. Glocks leaning in to the Defaults over at Banana. We've got JTR especially leading the charge. 2 teammates behind him. 1 man also entering Banana right now. 5th player out towards mid control. JTR needs to get this first kill, and indeed he does. Savage first to drop, didn't check the flower pot boost, and they do turn around towards it in the end. Double up for JTR. Licky with 1 in the responsive. 4 on 3 still favours the New Zealand side. Australia looking to try and find these trades. Bomb can go down from this position. Got 1 player covering him, 1 player on the boost, 1 man on the backstab, however, for the CT side. And they're still pressing. They're going in for this pretty quick. The backstab counteracts to the T side line. Val gets 1. Smiller with 1 more. Hats can finally strike, but it seems like too little too late for him as New Zealand look for 1 more pistol to keep themselves alive.
Just a fantastic round there from JTR. You found yourself in a position where opening entry was pretty much exploited immediately, and then looks up towards that boost position to make it 2. Australia have Licky to find a response out there from CT on rotate towards that triangle, but it's just not quite enough. A triple kill coming through from the AWP of JTR. And New Zealand, well, they find themselves a 4th round, but they find themselves up against a force buy. And you've got to think here from Australia, they have what it takes to buy it up and to actually force that reset. We've seen it not only on the first half, but also in the first map.
Smiller already feeling that pressure. Tag to 50. His teammate JTR also takes the deagle to the chest. Not a kill, but it's a decent start here for the Aussies.
Now, they've got themselves a slight gamble out here to the A site, a read in which they want to stack up the bomb site. And it might just be the right read.
Oh, backs a turn. Hats. Part of the position with the UMP. Gets 1 and 2. Continuing his SMG dominance alongside Licky. USP pulled out. Gump comes in with support. And it is nothing short of a disaster for New Zealand. Tasoy left licking his wounds as the stack from the Aussies works well. 13-4. Forced by back. And a harsh reset on the T side.
Hey, you could just see Hats out there from jungle just not being cleared at all. Finds himself on a contact, and all of that distraction is just being pulled out to jungle. It allows Licky to swing out in the open from that boiler sightline. Him and TJP compete together. And the SMG's doing work there in brackets for Australia.
That's the kind of round where you look at it and say it's over. If you weren't already thinking that at this stage. The confidence on the Aussies to take those SMGs, storm the mid control. 5 kills coming real thick and fast. Most of them going the way of Australia. 1 man left. New Zealand just left direct at this stage. This force buy round not working for them. Might have to force again at 14-4. There's no way you bring a 15-4 comeback to overtime. That's just impossible.
And once again, we've seen Hats and TJP put on another stellar performance. From map 1 to carry on to map 2. And New Zealand, just when you thought they'd have a break, just when you thought that there's workability with an opening pistol round, it's now 2 rounds in a row from Australia. And with another force buy on the table, with the rifles that Australia have for 3, all the advantages swing their way again.
TJP stands at arms alongside Hats to mow down Slippery. JTR with 1 responsive M4 picked back up by Hats, doubles up, switches back to the UMP as well, just because he can at this stage. There's 1 man left. Tasoy, 1 versus 4 for him. Deagle standing. Ultimately should not find much here.
Just trapped from all sides. The CTs are gaining bottom banana control. Trying to see if they can get him from bottom mid. There is at least 1 kill from the Deeg. And Tasoy is just hoping that they get further hungry, that there's more kills to present itself. There's a couple at least. He actually might be able to catch off Savage. This is now a 1v1.
Surely not, boys. Surely not, boys. Bomb is with the last CT, but he's got an M4 now. Tasoy trying to draw in the last. Licky, is he aware of the bomb? I don't think he is. Jump face past that gap on the smoke's been spotted. Tasoy looking to challenge him. And I think Licky will now grab the bomb's information, so he's just going to sit back and wait for Tasoy to come to him. Advantage still sits with Australia here. But there is a chance that New Zealand might save themselves.
Very clever there from Licky. He realizes if Tasoy's still out there towards a banana control, the only reason is that the bomb's somewhere towards T-spawn.
Smoke ready to come down as well. Suppressed for even more time. Licky's utility usage mostly perfect. bottlenecking the last man. Soy has no choice but to go down these stairs. 15 seconds, got to win the fight. Licky's range game might be a concern, but the HP advantage sits. M4 has no idea what's going his way, and he's just playing with him. He's toying with his food. 7 seconds, he runs for it. He's going to win this on timer alone. The Deagle can't strike. Licky waits back here, looks to win that fight. Look at this. This is ridiculous. Taps him in the back of the head, giving no money for Tsoy. And Australia on map, match, and Asian Championship points.
Now, well done there from Licky in the 1v1. Tsoy gave it a decent effort. Australia started sending bodies into the last player out there towards the logs, and it's the IGL of Licky to come through with a clutch scenario in the end. And New Zealand gave it the best effort of a survival clutch, but not to be. One more round to go now for Australia.
It's the silliest clutch I've seen all year, but it's worked. Gums caught one, TJP's caught another. UMP is continuing to reign supreme. The Deagle's desperate to clap back, and Smilodon can get one for it. And the scout of Slippery can keep Hats in check. 3-on-3. Orps now leaning in from Banana as they land on Slippery. Next JTR drops, and Smilodon with it all to do. 1v3 caught off by Auto Sniper, no scopes. And that's all she wrote for New Zealand. The Kiwis are down. It's at 16-4 and a 2-0 for the Aussies as they make their way to the IESF Asian Championship.
Now, the DAC even coming out towards the end there. But look, for Australia, I think it's the expected result, right, Jay? This was a good performance from them. They're always the favourite team. They've got the stronger lineup on paper. And I think moving forward into the LAN tournament itself, they're going to be a threat. They're going to have to be looked on for the majority of Asian teams as a guy and a team that you cannot underestimate at all.
100%. Like, I think you bang on the money with what we said about earlier about them being a stronger team. They just had more experience. They had incredible stuff coming into this series, and of course they've had incredible series coming out of the matchup itself. So look, they've proven themselves with what we already knew, that they were going to be favourites in this game. I'm just a little bit miffed that it wasn't quite as good towards the second map. Australia, I mean, it's New Zealand rather, they do deserve a lot of credit with what they did over on that Mirage, but their own map pick could suffice. The second map pick didn't quite see that same potential out of them. It's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, it is, but again, this is a difficult matchup. Yes, it's two mixed teams going up against one another, but you've got a core of one of the stronger teams in the region up against a New Zealand team that, again, is coming through with some younger players that don't have anywhere near as much pro experience as they do on the Australia side. And for New Zealand, unfortunately, that rivalry goes down again, Jay. It will not be a map victory for New Zealand, so the record, it stands strong for the Aussies.
Indeed it does, and that's another big shame, I guess you could say, in that sense, right? Because you've got that key opportunity there to finally break the streak, to finally turn a map towards the favour of New Zealand for the first time in history. But as you mentioned, the record holds strong, and just looking at how things went down on Mirage, just kind of a bit of a shame that didn't come through for the New Zealand side. The writing was semi on the wall, though, with how things worked out. You mentioned during that first map that if Australia was to win Mirage, it's probably going to seal the deal in the series, and as it turns out, it most certainly did there.
It did, and I think, again, it wasn't just so much individually. I think just even on the defaults alone, they were outclassed. Yeah, there were some very good rounds out there from Hats. We saw some unbelievable sequences from TJP once again, but across the board, both Map 1 and Map 2, it wasn't outclassing when it came to doing the basics right and keeping a core fundamental basis. So for Team Australia, it's a well-deserved victory here today to get them into the LAN.
And it's as you said, right, at the start of the series, it's all about just playing the basics, playing it simple, and just keeping yourselves in check, under control, everything just played to perfection in the basic positions there for the Team Australia side. And that's what they did. That's how they won the series. And towards the end, they even have enough breathing room to play a little bit around with a little bit of entertainment, SMGs and all there for their own right. But look, as we mentioned, these are one of the two strongest teams in the Asian Championship. And now that they've taken their spot, most certainly, we can look towards them and the rest of the teams that we have in the field and say that, right, that IESF World Finals spot is looking pretty tasty right now for Australia.
I mean, just knowing that 6 out of the 10 spots at the actual Asia Championship, let alone go to the main event, I think it's no doubt whatsoever that Team Australia will be there. They will definitely be in the main event itself. Yes, you do have to focus one event at a time, but they are the the favorite moving into that one. We've still got Team Mongolia versus Team Hong Kong in a qualifier in a few weeks' time to see whether the strong Mongolians are going to be able to come out on top, meet the Aussies there in the Asia Championships, because I think a lot of people would love to see both of those teams and both of those rosters attend.
Well, if it's a guarantee that Australia will make their way out of the Asian Championship and into the ISF finals, you now look towards those finals themselves as being like, right, okay, well, this is Australia's chance to shine. They weren't there in 2022. Their chance to do well in 2023. Of course, it'll be a much more significant team list in that sense. So how far do we see this team going in the grand pantheon of the circuit?
It could be tough to call it this early on when we still don't know the teams in the main event, but typically speaking, Australian teams have made top 8 performances. So you've got to expect that for Team Australia, with this lineup that they're forming, that they are going to be one of the favourites to go quite deep and to put themselves as a threat in every stage of the LAN event as they continue on.
Indeed they are, yeah. For New Zealand, I mean, what's the takeaways from this whole matchup? I mean, obviously, like, the last map probably lesser so, but the first map, it looked pretty competent from their own right. Obviously, they're trying to prove themselves against some very established talents in the Australian and just general oceanic scene in general. So, how do we feel about them coming out of this game?
I don't think very much at all. Again, this was a mixed roster coming in to represent New Zealand. It wasn't a series victory. It wasn't a map series victory today. A lot of these guys are going to focus on their own individual teams over the next few months and for the next year or so to try and see, is there more LAN opportunities coming? Can we represent New Zealand in a different way come the next qualifier and come a next future event? So for them today, it will be looked at as a disappointment. But again, Team Australia coming out on top with no surprise.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible to see some of these players over on New Zealand do particularly well in terms of the ESL, the AUNZ sort of championships and those sort of local tournaments that we see quite frequently within the Australian scene. It's like, I was still impressed with what JTR was doing. He had the one up above the AWP battles throughout the majority of that series. Smilodon, obviously, key impactful player as well for New Zealand whenever he had his chance to do so. So it's not like it's completely without merit, this lineup. And whilst it might not be a lineup that stays together, you can pick apart pieces and say, right, these guys, they're going to have opportunities to do things, I think, in the wider space. So for me, I looked at that. I don't think it's a complete failure in that sense.
No, it never is. I mean, again, you're using this experience. There'll be a lot of national pride on the line in this series. And again, a lot of these players are playing still with teams in the oceanic scene themselves. So they'll look at this one as maybe a smile, having a laugh, and just having some fun today. While it wasn't the result, it's still getting a series and coming very close to qualifying to a LAN.
Indeed, they did. One matchup away is always going to be that kind of key thing that, yes, it was close. It could also be a bit of a heartache. We mentioned Encore as well. It's going close towards the RMR, for example. That might be a little bit more damaging to the basis of what they could have achieved by comparison. But I think for a mixed team, they can be relatively happy with the fact that they competed. They did well on map 1 of their own right. So, yeah, I think it's positives at the very least for the New Zealand side. But the true positives, of course, lie with Australia moving on, as we expected, to the Asian Championship.
And just knowing, again, even for Gump, he's the stand-in really for Australia in this entire circuit, trying to help the lads out. I thought he did very well today, was bringing out some double AWP setups every now and then, helped them out of some uncomfortable situations here or there, and held his weight, which is exactly what you want as a fifth player with a very cohesive core that Australia are representing.
Absolutely. I don't know if it'll replace the permanent fifth over on the Encore side per se, but for this tournament and for this series, like, look, it's a perfect fit. It works well right now for what this team have been able to do. Gump doesn't need to be the star player. I think a lot of that onus rests on some of the other elements on this particular side, and we will get to see who those star players are in a short few moments' time as we look to wrap up how this whole series has gone down here. But look, again, Australia, dominant form, looking solid, and I think we're going to see I think that obviously with the 6 spots that we'll have in the Asian Championship being up for grabs, I do reckon that Australia will be going to go a little bit further than just taking a spot of their own right. I think they could actually win the whole event if they wanted to, particularly for the Asia region.
You've got to imagine that between them and Team Mongolia, again, they haven't qualified yet, but we're expecting them to do so. They're going to be the two teams that you look at in that grand final position. Okay, who's taking that first and who's taking that second spot to move into the main event itself? I think for Team Australia, the core's still got the ANZ champs to play. We know that they've got a few more local events before they move over to the LAN event itself. So I'm sure preparations will be in order on the few weeks on the lead up to the LAN event itself and make sure that they're ready to take on the Asia competition.
Well, between Mongolia and Australia, who do you reckon right now is the stronger of the two teams at the moment?
Probably Mongolia. I think they've had more international experience in recent history. The core of Team Australia, we haven't seen as often at the LAN events. We didn't see them at the RMR. We know that Mongolia are playing at the Major at the moment, so they were very strong when it came to the last IESF, and I think they'll be very similar going into this one.
Again, a lot of experience, a lot of history in that sort of sense right now. It would be kind of a bit of a flip of the switch, right? We've gone from the favourites, heavy favourites being in the Australian side in this particular matchup. If they take on that Mongolian team, then we could be seeing some very different sort of positions right there for the Aussies, right? Maybe they could be the ones that get smashed out in their own map-ups, and only time will tell in that sort of sense. Also be a very different environment, because as well, the Asian Championship is on land. This is all online here for the qualified positions, so the environment's going to be very different. The stakes will be much higher, so I'm looking forward to see what they can do in the future. I'm really looking forward to see how well they can handle themselves in that top 2 matchup. But for now, they are the well and true victors in Team Australia. Let's take a look at the map stats and show you exactly what we've seen over the course of today's proceedings. Inferno looking pretty solid, pretty good. Not quite as significant for TJP's own part of things on the Australian side. It's still within that sort of margin of very good performances from the entire lineup. So for Australia, you can give them credit in that sort of sense. And again, with a 16-4 fashion, you can't expect anything less.
No, not at all. Kill distribution was fairly tight and across the board, just simply outclassed them when it came to map number 2. And for Australia, just knowing that we've had some blowout map performances in the open qualifier, now moving forward here into the regional matchup against New Zealand, they'll have a lot of confidence moving forward into the LAN event itself, knowing that locally and in the region of Asia as a whole, they've always been a very strong threat.
And again, the credit to New Zealand star individuals. Val, of course, top fragging in that last one. Smilodon still being impactful, and JTR with the AWP position, of course, looking just proficient of their own right here. So again, spots positives to take away from New Zealand, but Australia, again, glory all the way for their own part of things. I imagine the head-to-head stats will also be looking pretty dominant in this matchup, and yes, indeed they do. Not to be unexpected for a 16-4 here.
Yeah, the Southern Cross coming out on top there from Australia once more. And for New Zealand, while it was a better performance out on map number 1, it didn't quite translate over to map number 2. So Australia, yeah, winning out on all departments to take Inferno, to take the series in a 2-0 fashion.
Indeed, yes, looking dominant as per usual, and looking fantastic in general. Let's take a look at our MVP now of this matchup, and I mean, it's a tight kill spread, so it's very difficult to sort of like pick one apart, but I imagine that it might just end up being, yeah, Gump, I can accept that. He did pretty good over in map 2.
Yeah, again, I look at Hats and TJP as being the ones in the conversation. Gump coming through with the MVP, so the youngster, the 19-year-old that was most recently playing on DGG, is going to come away with the MVP on Inferno.
I will say that for the series, though, I do back TJP as being the overall best of 3 MVP. So for me, I look towards him, and I think that he's had the most impact, top frag in both map 1 and map 2. Map 2 not saying much, of course, in the grand scale of things, but you know, that does make a lot of sense, I think, for how the series itself has gone down. Give Gump a little bit of credit, of course, and for Australia, again, it's all the credit in the world. They are now qualified into Gamers8. They are now moving on to the IESF Asian Championship, and we can see all of the countries that have qualified so far in a short few moments. There's still a few more qualifiers to play out here, Dwayne, as well. So there's still a few more spots to decide in terms of where we stand right now going into the Asian Championship.
Yeah, looking at some of the countries, I mean, you'll be familiar with Indonesia and Vietnam that have been involved in the circuit most recently. I remember Crazy Guy and Skyred back in the day of Vietnam that came to the European soils and were able to show some quality there. So now we look at the new generation of players to see what they're able to offer. Uzbekistan, a region that we don't see very often. India and Pakistan as well, another one from Middle East that we don't get to see in these international competitions. I remember Team Wolf back in the day in one of the early majors featuring an Indian team. So good to see that they're getting involved going into an Asia LAN itself.
Well, at this stage, this team list is incomplete at the moment. We're still waiting on the East Asian qualifier to take place, which I believe is the matchup you mentioned, obviously, with Mongolia versus Hong Kong being the series that we see between those two teams and where they sort of stand in terms of getting forward in that sort of sense. That one won't be streamed, but it was happening later on this month. So keep your eyes looked at all the social media channels, and you can see exactly who will come out on top. I do reckon, however, that there's a pretty decent, clear-cut example as Mongolia being able to win that better matchup and being able to take the spot because they are on dominant form. They are a team that are currently competing at majors and significant events in the international space. So it does make a lot of sense that that's where things will go. But you never know, a surprise could be on the table for Hong Kong.
There could be. And I think when you look at that list, knowing that 6 out of those 10 teams, I mean, there's only 9 there listed now, but there'll be a majority of them going to the main event, which is a great representation of Asia, because I think we've seen over the last handful of years that anytime we have these Asia lands, it's maybe 1 spot, it's maybe 2 spots to the main event. So to actually see 6 shows us that there'll be a lot of Asia representation right there, right at the end.
And a lot more action to come over the course of the next week as well. Still got a few more days worth of action here in the IESF online qualifiers, so do keep it locked to everything here on the Twitch channels and the Twitter pages and all the social medias in general to see what's going on in the rest of the Asia Championship. But for today, that's all we've got for you. Australia take the crown in the Oceanic Derby and they make their way forward to the Asian Championships. WEC, any final thoughts from you, my friend?
I'll just carry on watching everything. I'll be watching the Asia LAN event. I'll be very keen to see who's the representation and who can prove it on the larger scales out there in Romania.
Awesome. We're going to keep on the road to the finals very, very soon indeed. Keep it locked to everything IESF, as we'll be back very soon with even more Counter-Strike action. But until then, though, we bid you all adieu from here, from Australia.